Salute this morning led by Mr. LaBeouf.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Note the absence of Supervisor Rockholm, who is on vacation, and I have assured him he'll stay that way while he is on vacation. And so we will proceed with the four of us this morning. If we could begin with the statement of meeting procedures.
Welcome to the Placer County Board of Supervisors meeting of Tuesday, August 10th, 2010. Agendas are available on the wall outside this meeting room. If you are here to speak on an issue not appearing on the agenda, you may do so during the public comment period. There's a 3-minute time limit per speaker. The board is not permitted to take action on items addressed under public comment. When you speak, clearly state your name and address for the record. All items on the agenda will be open for the public to address before final action is taken. There's a 3-minute time limit per speaker, which will be monitored by a timer on the podium. If there person speaking on behalf of a group with no other testimony from another member of the group, please identify yourself and your time may be extended at the pleasure of the board. Keep in mind that the chairman has discretion of limiting the total discussion time on any item. If you are hearing impaired, we have listening devices available. It is requested that all patients and cell phones be either turned off or put in the silent mode. Thank you for your participation and cooperation.
All right, this is the time for public comment. This is the time when any member of the public may address the board on any item that is not on the agenda, knowing that the board may not take action on items brought to us under public comment. Good morning, Mr. Scott.
Good morning.
I have asked the clerk that since you are speaking on behalf of the entire Sheriff's Department, all of whom will represent our county and are heavily armed, that we will extend your time and just not start a clock on you this morning.
I was practicing to beat the buzzer. So.
Well, you may extend beyond.
Well, I was going to make a few off-the-cuff remarks, but the sheriff reminded me that I ramble, so and that you have lunch plans, so I wrote a few notes here for myself to keep it succinct. As you're aware, the Placer County Sheriff's Honor Guard recently traveled to Washington, D.C. this May for Police Week and National Peace Officers Memorial Day. This year, 324 names, including our own Sheriff William Elam, were added to the memorial. This includes the 116 peace officers that were killed in the line of duty in 2009. Fortunately, this is the lowest number of line of duty deaths since the 1980s. Unfortunately, this trend has not continued as peace officer deaths in the United States are up 44% this year and up 50% in California. California also has the unfortunate distinction of having the most line of duty deaths in the nation this year. Over the last decade, the United States, on average, loses 160 officers every year. That's an officer killed in the line of duty every 53.5 hours. In 2001, we saw this spike at 240 officers killed in a single year. For me, this year, watching large MCI tour buses bring the family members of slain officers to the candlelight vigil at the memorial site was an emotional experience. Bus after bus after bus, escorted by police motorcades, arrived, and these family members got off and walked between the long lines of Honor Guard members from police agencies from around the world as they made their way to the memorial to grieve for their lost family members. It was quite heartbreaking to witness the overwhelming sense of loss for so many people, especially for young children who lost their fathers or mothers and had them taken from them so quickly. This May, our Honor Guard traveled to Washington, D.C. to pay tribute to all these men and women and to pay special tribute to Placer County Sheriff William Elam, who was killed in the line of duty October 1st, 1951 at Lake Tahoe, California, near Dollar Hill. He was survived by his wife and 2 children. Some might ask why. Why would we bother to travel across the country to honor a man who died years before many of us were born? We didn't know him. We never met the man. I think the answer lies with building on the thoughts of British philosopher John Stuart Mill. What a miserable creature that cannot understand the greater good or realize and believe something far greater than himself, even be willing to sacrifice himself for that greater good. What joy a man experiences when his own well-being is secondary to that of his fellow man. Soldiers, Marines, sailors, and airmen understand this. So do peace officers, firefighters, and other first responders. We all understand the sacrifices we may be called to make. Certainly the family members of the 8 Placer County Sheriff's deputies who have died in the line of duty understood this, but I believe so do most Americans. That's why we celebrate the best and most honorable among us. Every year, we celebrate the birth of George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King, Jr. We recognize the sacrifices they made for their fellow man and Americans, even to their own personal detriment. We even extend this to large groups when we honor veterans on Veterans Day, our slain servicemen and women on Memorial Day, and our slain peace officers on Peace Officers Memorial Day. And I believe this Board of Supervisors understands this concept. We were immensely proud to represent the Sheriff and the citizens of Placer County in Washington, D.C. this May, and that's why our Honor Guard wanted to give you a token of our appreciation for your support. I hope you accept it with the same pride we have in presenting it to you. This framed memento that the Honor Guard bought for the supervisors has the 8 Placer County Sheriff's deputies and, of course, the Sheriff, William Elam, who was added to the memorial this year, that were killed in the line of duty serving the citizens of Placer County. Each one of these engravings came directly from the wall of the Peace Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C., and we've included a badge, the 2010 commemorative badge from the Peace Officers Memorial, and the coin from the memorial itself. And we're here to present this to you for your support, for sending us to Washington, D.C., and being able to represent the Sheriff's Office and the citizens of Placer County there during Police Week.
Thank you. Ed, you want to come up here, please? Ed, you want to come up here, please? I think you'd be in the middle. You're going to have to be surrounded by the political hacks. Thank you. We will find a place of honor and distinction here in the domes to hang this. Thank you very much.
I also brought back for all the board members a program from the Peace Officers Memorial on the Capitol grounds. I'll give those to you. And in this back is also the same program and the program from the Candlelight Vigil that has Sheriff William Elam's name in it. We'll put those there.
Thank you.
Again, thank you very much for your support.
Thank you. Anyone else under public comment? Mr. Takatomi, good morning.
It is Tokutomi. I'd like to thank everybody for, I'd like to thank Board of Supervisors for their tremendous support in helping us, the Placer Japanese American Citizens League, along with Sacramento and Florin, for sponsoring the site where the 442nd Soldier Bronze Memorial is going to be placed. My name is Ken Tokutomi. I live in 239 Center Street in Auburn. I'm the treasurer of the Placer County Japanese American Citizens League, and I just stopped by in public comment to thank you guys for making such a sizable donation, your dedication to great heroes of the 442nd, the 100th Battalion, and Military Intelligence Service. And I especially want to thank Rocky Rockhome, that empty seat right there, for being the spearhead of that, and for Jim Holmes for donating $1,000 to our campaign. We're budgeting about $160,000 to finish the project. We have about $70,000 raised, primarily in Placer County, and we have about $15,000 in pledges. So we're well on our way to get it. We're hoping to dedicate the 6'8" bronze statue June of 2011. We are in a push right now to look for corporate sponsorships and to reach out in the Sacramento area and raise money there. And I'd like to give Jim Holmes a token of our appreciation, a bronze medallion. We did a limited edition of 200 of them. To get one of these, all you got to do is donate $1,000. They're 1 of 200. They're signed by the Franz Borka, who is the artist, and Franz is about 82 years old. He has a heart condition, so when he dies, this might be worth a lot of money. So come on up, Jim. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'll be back to give you a progress on how we're doing and invite you to our dedication, hopefully in June of 2011.
Thank you, Ken.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Kitty Hollitz. I represent Area 4 Agency on Aging, and I want to thank you for making my appointment for 3 more years. It's an education, and it's fun. I learn a lot. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Good morning to everyone. My name is Marilyn Jasper. I live in Loomis. I'm speaking on behalf of Public Interest Coalition. About a year ago, the Board of Supervisors was sent information regarding and asked to oppose an egregious bill, AB 979, which preempts local jurisdiction from self-governance with regard to fish and game matters. AB 979 will prohibit a city or a county from adopting ordinances or regulation that affect the taking of fish and game unless they meet very specific, narrow criteria. The bill states that, quote, unless otherwise authorized by the Fish and Game Code or other state or federal law, the Fish and Game Commission and the Department of Fish and Game are the only entities that may adopt or promulgate regarding the taking of fish and game on any land or waters within the state. Placer County has an adopted legislative platform that states in the very first principle, quote, support legislation to restore local control and oppose efforts that will hinder or limit the county's ability to self-govern. AB 979 does just that. It limits and hinders. Regional parks and open space districts oppose this bill due to concerns it would remove their ability to establish public uses in parks, preserves, and other open space lands they manage. We urge you to adhere to the county's legislative platform and strongly oppose AB 979. Otherwise, we risk governance by a state agency that is comprised of appointees. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Wanda Adams. I live in Newcastle, California, on Indian Hill Road. I'm here to address comments that were quoted in the Auburn Journal after the July 13th board meeting. Mr. Euler was quoted as correcting the record, informing the retirees that back in his first term, 1993-97, Placer County paid just 60% of those medical benefits, with employees ponying up the remaining 40%. This was incorrectly quoted, as there was an addendum to the MOU with the county. The original MOU was August 15th, 1989. In the 1991 MOU addendum, it states in item 12, there's several items concerning benefits, but item 12, the parties agree effective pay period number 2 beginning June 26, 1992 at 5:01 p.m. to revamp the current health insurance cost distribution to where the county pays 90% of the average cost of premiums of all the plans and the employee pays the difference. This will include the employee only. And the rest of that article refers to Tahoe employees. They'll play because there is no HMO in the Tahoe area. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that this was, in 1991, employees were paying 90%, or paying 10%, and the county was paying 90%. And I believe it was in 2003 that it went to 100% county paid, and this was extended to retirees. I also stated in another appearance here that the county requires all retirees at age 65 enroll in Medicare. And, of course, we have to pay for our Medicare. And the county really only provides us with paid supplemental insurance. It's not a full health insurance policy. It's supplemental. So just wanted to set the record straight.
Thank you. Anybody else under public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to Supervisor Committee reports. Any members of the board have anything to report at this time? Okay, I'll let you know that Golden Sierra met last week, and in closed session, we had a conversation in regard to the litigation with Nevada County, and we are proceeding. As you know, Nevada County removed themselves from the agency, claiming they had no obligation to the existing employees that was created during the time that they were part of the JPA. And so we just want to let you know that that litigation continues, and hopefully by this time, counsel for the JPA has gotten in touch with County Counsel's office, as they were directed to do so, to update County Counsel as to the status. So that concludes my report on Golden Sierra. Seeing no other supervisor reports, we'll go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. My understanding is that we have two items at this point. We're looking at item 16B, the minutes of our July 13th meeting, where our colleague Ms. Montgomery was not here. So we will take that off to have a separate vote from which she can abstain. And then item number 20, it's my understanding, is requested to be removed. Is there anything else on consent that any board member wishes to have removed for discussion? And seeing none, any member of the public wish to have any item that's on our consent calendar removed for discussion? Okay, we'll have a motion on the remaining consent calendar, absent items 16B and item 20.
Move approval. Second.
Motion Supervisor Holmes, second Wygant to approve consent. Roll call, please.
Holmes?
Aye.
Wygant?
Yes.
Montgomery?
Yes.
Euler?
Aye. And may I now have a separate motion on item 16B, approval of the minutes of the July 13, 2010 meeting?
Second.
Motion Wygant, second Holmes to approve the minutes of that meeting. Roll call, please.
Wygant?
Yes.
Holmes?
Yes.
Montgomery?
Abstain.
Euler?
Aye. Thank you very much. Why don't we go ahead and take item number 20, which is the Community Development Resources Agency, the Engineering Surveying Assignment Agreement of Timlick Subdivision Security. Mr. Zicker, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Wes Zicker from Engineering and Surveying. I understand that Marcus LaDuca, representing the applicant, has asked that this item be withdrawn.
Speak up a little bit. I don't know if
sorry.
it's your mic or what's going on, but it's on. I see the lights on, but I'm not hearing you real well.
Okay, my apologies. It's my understanding that Marcus LaDuca, representing the applicant, the James Company doing business as Timlick LLC, has requested the item be pulled from the agenda. I believe Marcus is here, and I thought he suggested perhaps the board consider the item on September 14th, but I'll leave that to him to speak to.
Okay. Mr. LaDuca?
as Mr. LaDuca is coming to up to the podium, I just want to reference this is a consent item, so it's not necessarily that you continue it. It would simply come back.
Right. Understood.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Marcus LaDuca and Avis, 3721 Douglas Boulevard, on behalf of Martis Valley Associates. We've requested that the item be bumped at least until mid-September. We're in the process with the water system improvements. We've been trying to get assessment district financing, and then we looked at the SCIP program. We're now talking to our private lender about the first two components, which is the interim system plus the redundant system. The redundant system is built. The cost to tie into the Lahontan system is a little over $400,000, and so we're looking at trying to finance that in one lump sum. And so we thought we'd have an answer back from our lender at this point, but we think we're going to need another month or so to be able to finalize that. So we asked that this be bumped for that period of time for us to be able to pull that together in terms of the financing. As the board is well aware, financing in these times is rather difficult, trying to pull things in the private lending market. And then also with assessed valuations being down, it's more and more difficult to try to pull forward assessment districts. So we're working, your staff's been very helpful. We've been working with PCWA to try to come to a solution and not only finance the first two components, but also the permanent system, looking at that in terms of a phased approach. And so we're hopeful that this will allow us the time to be able to pull that together.
Okay. Wes, any concerns over the request this time?
Staff has no concerns if the board decides to, I'm not sure what the term is, not continue it, but
Simply
postpone it.
table the item until such time that it's ready to be represented to the board. Supervisor Montgomery?
Yeah. What is your expectation that this will be wrapped up by September 14th, which was the original date that we were considering to bring it back?
We were hopeful to have the answer back actually before the end of August. First, we thought it was going to be right around this time, and then the lender needed a little bit more time, so we're hopeful to have an answer by the end of August.
Okay. Based on that, I would suggest that our board bring this back on the 14th of September as an item and then take appropriate action at that time.
Okay. Any board members have any concern about continuing this item or simply tabling this item until it can be reheard on the 14th? Seeing none, we'll do so without objection, and I don't think we need a formal vote. We'll just take it and do it that way. All right. That concludes the items on our consent calendar. We have a little bit of time to move to some department head items prior to our 9:45 timed item. So we will begin with our department head item number 5, Administrative Services. Right. No, I understand. Thanks, though.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is April Pay. I'm with the Procurement Services Division. I'm here to request your approval of item 5A on your agenda, which is to renew expiring blanket purchase orders with 5 firms to provide environmental services for the Department of Public Works on an as-needed basis. The current blanket purchase orders were awarded to these firms as a result of a competitive request for qualifications. With your approval, the new blanket purchase orders will total a maximum of $725,000 and will be effective for a 1-year period. This is actually a reduction of $400,000 over the previous year. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions by board members? Seeing none, any questions by members of the public on this item? Do we have a motion?
Second.
Motion by Montgomery, second Holmes, to approve item 5A. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you very much. We're going to jump down to Facility Services, item number 8. We'll take, we'll do all of the items regarding redevelopment agency and related items together, probably after our 11 o'clock timed item, okay?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Will Dickinson, Facility Services. Item 8A involves the Owen Somas design contract. On May 18th, your board approved an agreement with Owen Somas for final design and construction management services for the SMD1 upgrade project. However, at that time, you wanted us to limit our spending on this project to $750,000. The intent of that action was for us to do some additional exploration of the design costs or the construction costs for the regional project, which is a project that we're considering on a parallel path. On July 27th, your board approved an agreement with Brown and Caldwell to perform engineering services and updated cost estimates on that regional project. We expect that work to be completed by mid-October. Staff intends to return your board with that updated cost information and on the updated cost information for the upgrade project, which cost has also gone down in the meantime. We plan to bring that back to you in early November or late November or early December with some type of financial analysis that gives you a good cost comparison of the two projects. So far, Owen Somas has billed almost the entire $750,000. With that, they've substantially completed revisions to the preliminary design report, made significant progress on the 30% design documents. In order to continue to show progress towards compliance with our permit, staff recommends that your board authorize the expenditure of an additional $900,000 to further develop the upgrade project through December. This is particularly important because the Plant 1 permit approval hearing that was scheduled for May before the Regional Water Quality Control Board got delayed to September. So we will be up before that board in late September, and in that draft permit is a requirement to complete the design of the upgrade project no later than July of 2011. Any delay of funding at this time will make it very difficult for us to meet that July schedule, that deadline. That may cause concern at the regional board as we go before them to hear our permit. Therefore, staff recommends that we continue with the parallel project path and through December, and that your board authorize the expenditure of the additional $900,000 for the design of the Sewer Maintenance District 1 wastewater treatment plant upgrade project under the previously approved contract with Owen Somas Engineering. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Supervisor Holmes.
Oh, I don't have any questions. I just have a comment. I don't have any problem with the authorization of additional funds, but I'd rather see that item cut down to about $600,000 instead of $900,000. Just kind of in lieu of the, the challenges we have financially.
Okay, Supervisor Montgomery.
Well, thank you for the presentation. If I recall correctly, in April, the estimate on this project was $79 million. And now we're looking at an estimate of $69 million. So going through this design process, we've taken about $10 million out of our expectation of what this project will cost. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
So they're asking for another $900,000, or you're asking for almost another $900,000, almost another $1 million on this. My suggestion would be similar to Supervisor Holmes in that I would suggest $750, much as we did the last time, and then come back to us with a report at that point and see if those additional funds are actually necessary. I think they're doing a great job in reducing the overall cost of the project, but I agree with Supervisor Holmes that we need to be watching our pennies and dollars as well.
Supervisor Wygant.
Along the same vein, I spoke with Jim Durfee. I don't know if you had a chance to talk to Jim, Will, but Jim thought that 600 was actually a pretty good number. My concern is driven by trying to push that envelope and find that nice place where once we get the information back in October, I think we will have a pretty clear picture as to which of these two options are going to be most desirable, and Jim seemed to feel comfortable that $600,000 would keep us along at a healthy pace with the upgrade concept, but this is $300,000 from an investment that we might not make. So, if that helps.
And I would obviously be happy to defer to Mr. Durfee's knowledge on this.
Okay. Seeing no other comments by board members, any member of the public wish to address this item? I'm hearing discussion amongst the board members that we'd like to approve the item, but with a contract cap of $600,000. Is that going to be codified in a motion here?
Yes,
Yeah, so moved.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion by Supervisor Montgomery to approve the contract with a limit of $600,000, seconded by Supervisor Holmes. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you very much. And moving on to SMD 3.
Yes, thank you. The proposed SMD 3 regional sewer project consists of decommissioning Plant 3 and constructing a pump station and pipeline through SMD 2 collection system to the City of Roseville's treatment plant. Your board committed its intent to regionalize SMB in a January 8, 2008 letter to the Regional Water Quality Control Board. Your board has further shown its intent to pursue this project by creating a capital project budget and providing $900,000 in funding to match an Army Corps of Engineering grant. Staff has completed the process to select a consultant to prepare a design for the project. Requests for proposals were sent to 129 engineering firms. 8 proposals were received. An RFP panel reviewed these proposals and recommended Brown & Caldwell as the best qualified firm to perform the work. Accordingly, staff negotiated an agreement with Brown & Caldwell to complete the pre-design and design of the project and to provide services during construction. The cost of providing services included in the agreement is $1,344,173. Sufficient funds are available in the SMD3 Regional Sewer Capital Project budget to fund this project. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers will reimburse the county for 75% of the cost of service provided under this agreement. Therefore, staff recommends that your board approve an agreement with Brown & Caldwell for a not to exceed amount of $1,344,173 and authorize the chair to execute the agreement.
Questions by board members? And seeing none, questions by members of the public on this item. And we have a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion Holmes, second Montgomery to approve item 8B. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to Health and Human Services, contract regarding adult system of care. Morning, Murray.
Good morning. Maureen Baumann, Director of the Adult System of Care. I have before you consideration for an employee agreement with Dr. Steve Sugden, staff psychiatrist, to be hired August 17th through August 16th for a direct compensation of $237,000 with a compensation package up to $319,676. As you know, Health and Human Services is mandated to utilize physicians with specialized psychiatric expertise to provide specific medication services for persons that have severe psychiatric issues in Placer County. These specialized services are strategically placed in health and mental health programs in order to actually just both provide the cost-effective service as well as to draw down those federal leveraged federal and state funds whenever. Dr. Stegman was hired by Placer County in 2009 through a competitive process. He filled the vacancy at that time. He is board certified in psychiatry, and he serves approximately 1,900 persons per year, working primarily in our inpatient unit. He's also bilingual, so is able to provide services to folks that are Spanish speaking, and he does a lot of our after-hours work, about 15 hours per year. I'd like to point out some of the great work that he has accomplished in our inpatient unit along with the other staff psychiatrists there. They have continued reduce the length of stay for 20 people in that hospital. And as a result of that, in last year, we actually were able to admit an additional 188 persons over the prior year. And I just would point out that if those folks which have to serve, we didn't have the capacity to serve in our inpatient program down at Kirby Hills, we would have been expending an additional $600,000 for those services for those folks. This work and treatment of the folks in psychiatric distress is critical and essentially managed very high-risk population within the resources that are available. Just a couple other facts. The psychiatrist salaries have been since 2006, and this contract includes language that would apply any wage or benefit change that you would authorize, such as the MTOs that were put in place. Those apply to these contracts just like other employees. Personnel, County Council, the CEO's office are fully supportive of this approach. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions and recommend approval of the contract.
Questions by board members? Supervisor Holmes?
How many psychiatrists do we have on staff now?
In the adult system of care, we have 4, but 3 EE. So we've significantly reduced the number.
We had, what, 6?
6.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any questions? Members of the public wish to address the board on this item? And seeing none, do we have a motion? Motion by Wygant. We'll give the second to Montgomery. Sorry about that, Jim. To to approve the contract with Dr.
Second.
Sugden. All in favor, please say aye. Aye, opposed? None, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 9B, environmental health. Ms. Paul.
There we go. Jim Paul, Environmental Health Director. I'm here today to ask approval for continuance of a contract been in place for 15 years with El Dorado County. It's a revenue agreement. It's a win-win for both El Dorado and Placer County. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer those.
Any board members have any questions on this item? Seeing none, any members of the public have any questions on this item? All right, bring it back for action.
Second.
Motion by Montgomery, second by Holmes. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? And moving on to Public Works, Snow Creek Environment Zone Restoration Project.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Peter Kratz, Public Works. Item 10A, that's the Snow Creek Stream Environment Zone Restoration Project. It consists of asking for board approval of PSA Professional Services Agreement number 1100 with Camp Dresser and McKee, Inc. for the Snow Creek Restoration Project for just over $56,000. The background on this project is that it is located on the north shore of Lake Tahoe in the Tahoe Vista area. Previous industrial operations on the project site impacted the land and the runoff draining to Snow Creek. Placer County purchased the land to address these environmental impacts. The consulting services requested today by Public Works are to design a restoration project for restoring the land and improving the water quality of the Snow Creek watershed. The consultant CDM previously competed to become pre-qualified on our Tahoe engineering consultant list. The firm was subsequently selected from the list, and the scope of services and costs was negotiated to our satisfaction. The PSA is exempt from CEQA. The total project cost for the Snow Creek restoration is $4 million, which includes construction. Funding for the professional services agreement has been secured through federal EPA Brownfield and U.S. Bureau of Reclamation grants. So the formal request of your report today is to adopt a resolution authorizing the chairman to sign and approve PSA number 100 with Camp Dresser McKee, Inc. for the amount of $356,235 and authorize our Public Works to approve and sign future amendments up to a total of $35,623 if determined necessary. Happy. Any questions you might have?
Questions by board members? Any member of the public wish to address the board on this? All right, do we have a motion on the item? Montgomery, second by Holmes, in order to move forward with the stream environment restoration project in Snow Creek. All please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you very much. Donner Pass Road Stabilization Project.
Yes, sir. 10B, again, Peter Kratz for the record, Public Works. This item consists of asking for board approval award contract number 1099 to the lowest responsible and responsive bidder, Aspen Developers Corporation, in the amount of approximately $359,000 for construction of the Donner Pass Road Stabilization Project. This project is located on Historic Highway 40, just west of Donner Summit and near the Sugar Bowl Ski Resort. The proposed work will stabilize and rehabilitate a large eroding cut slope adjacent to the highway that sheds sediment and impacts runoff draining Lake Van Norden. Bids were opened for the project on July 19, 2010, and 5 bids were received, with Aspen of Truckee, California, determined to be the low responsible and responsive bidder. The project is determined to be categorically exempt from applicable provisions of CEQA. The total project cost is estimated at $485,000, which includes construction. Funding for construction is funded by a combination of an erosion control grant from the Nevada Conservancy, the California Tahoe Conservancy lease revenue, and Placer County traffic mitigation. So our formal request of your board is to then adopt a resolution awarding, with County Council and Risk Management Review contract number 1099 to Aspen Developers Corporation in the amount of $358,950.50 for construction of said project, and authorizing the chairman to execute the construction contract on behalf of Placer County, and authorizing our Director of Public Works to approve and sign contract change orders up to $35,000 if determined necessary.
Questions by board members? Jennifer?
I want to thank you for moving this forward. It's far more than just sediment. Large boulders fall off that section of cut slip with alarming regularity. So this is something that's been long in coming. I also really wanted to point out something that I'm very pleased to see in here, which is the responsive and responsible bidder, Aspen Developers, is a local contract company. Sadly, they're not actually in Placer County, but they are out of Truckee. And then the second lowest bid on this was Rick Martin Construction out of Soda Springs. And so I'm just very pleased to see local bidders who are bidding on these things and coming in at a number that we can be happy to live with.
Right.
So just thank you very much for this.
When will work begin on this project?
I would expect hopefully later this month, late August, and it should just be a one-season project. It's a pretty straightforward effort. Lots of our projects tend to go more than one season oftentimes, but this is a small in scale, but will have a good, a positive environmental impact.
So, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but looking at the map provided, the project site is on the upslope side. So it's not so much road stabilization as it is hillside stabilization then?
Correct.
Okay. Because when I read road stabilization, I was thinking we're down the downslope side and we're,
Right.
at risk of that
road slipping
that lane falling off down to the railroad tracks or something. But that's we're keeping big rocks from tumbling down on Highway 40.
Right, and it tends to be an overflow area where people park at Sugar Bowl Ski Resort. And what Supervisor Jennifer is alluding to is that cars sometimes get hit in the spring when these boulders come tumbling down.
One more reason to park in the Mountain Judo lot
That's
when you're
right.
skiing at Sugar Bowl.
That's right. So, the original basis for all this effort was through, and when Supervisor Wygant is involved with the Sierra Nevada Conservancy Board, was it's all about water quality. And that's, even though there's some safety issues being pulled into this project, which is a good thing, the basis for this whole effort is to improve the water quality downstream in that particular watershed. So.
Okay, thank you. Any members of the public have any questions or comments on this item? No damaged cars to report, nothing like that. Yeah, contact Tony. That's good. All right, do we have a motion?
Move approval.
With great reluctance? Motion, Montgomery, second Wygant, to approve the road stabilization project, contract 1099. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Aye, opposed, none. Thank you very much. And moving on to the Forest Hill Road Bridge seismic retrofit project. That has received a great deal of attention of late.
Yes. Item number 10C, again, Peter Kratz for the record with Public Works. This item consists of asking for your board approval of contract number 73226, amendment number 3 with Quincy Engineering, Inc. for Phase 4 of the project scope, which includes engineering consulting support during project construction for just under $1.2 million. The background on this project is the Forest Hill Bridge was placed on the mandatory seismic retrofit list way back in 1999 by Caltrans. Quincy was subsequently retained to initially analyze the bridge structure, develop strategies for retrofitting identified structural vulnerabilities, and finally developing the final retrofit design. This consulting effort covered 3 phases of the contract and 2 contract amendments totaling $5.8 million that to date has resulted in publishing project plans and specifications for advertising the project to interested bidders. Quincy was originally selected from an open request for proposals from interested consulting engineers. Through the consultants' consistently positive efforts and results to date, they have been retained throughout all design phases of the project, and Public Works is proposing today your board's approval to retain them through the duration of project construction. The design and engineering support work is exempt from CEQA, and the project itself has been approved through applicable CEQA and NEPA provisions. The consultant contract and project construction is funded by a combination of sources, including the Federal Highway Bridge Program, State Proposition 1B Local Bridge Seismic Retrofit Account, and Proposition 1B Local Streets and Roads. There is sufficient funding in the Department's 10-11 fiscal year budget for the proposed consultant work. So the formal request of your board is to then adopt a resolution authorizing the chairman to sign and execute contract number 73226, amendment number 3, with Quincy Engineering, Inc. for Phase 4 of the project scope, which includes construction support for the said project in the amount of $1,199,922.15, and authorize our Director of Public Works to approve and sign future amendments up to a total amount of $120,000 if determined necessary. And with that, happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions by board members on this particular project? If so, just go read the paper.
That's right.
Any members of the public have any questions or comments on this? All right, what's the board's pleasure?
Second.
Motion Montgomery, second Holmes, to approve contract 73226. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None. Thank you very much. All
Thank you.
right, we have moved through department head items sufficiently well to get us right to our first timed item, which is our 9:45 timed item. And we begin with a presentation by soccer dad, Mr. Bell. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members. Nice to see you.
How'd you guys finish up?
We finished up with the, we finished up with the third place.
Oh, very
Third
nice.
place, yes.
Very nice. I ran into Mr. Bell down in Elk Grove this weekend at the Sunstroke Classic, where our daughters were playing. On their respective soccer teams. Him from the Rockland, and us from Loomis,
That's right.
representing the Loomis area. Yes.
Grab my materials there.
I'll just pass them down.
Okay. Hopefully. Did everybody
right,
get a
please,
copy?
go ahead.
Okay, great. Well, good morning. We have a two-part presentation for you this morning on service delivery options and recommendations on the agenda for you today. And there are copies of the presentation back on the green chair for anybody who'd care to have a copy. There are two components. The first, we thought we'd give you an update on county departmental cost savings measures and an update on our fund balance. And then, of course, the second component of today's presentation will be a series of service delivery options and recommendations in a variety of areas, including parks, custodial services, Placer Commuter Express and telecommunications, dental services, and engineering and surveying. So there'll be a series of items you're going to see today. The first portion I'll be giving you regarding our county departmental cost savings as a way of an introduction, and unbalanced portion. And I'll be joined this morning by Becky Regan from the County Executive Office as well. She'll be providing introduction and additional comments on service delivery option, and then a series of presentations by county department and the variety of service delivery areas will follow. The cost savings. Now, as we all know, and as you've seen for the past several years, counties statewide continue to experience revenue shortfalls. As you've seen, we've been before you on numerous occasions, and we'll be starting again next week when we come before you to talk about our county budget workshops. Of course, those beginning on August 18th and 19th. We'll be coming to visit with you about that. The revenue shortfalls that have plagued the state and have hit counties severely have continued for the past years. Significant budget reductions and, in some cases, large-scale layoffs have hit counties statewide. Placer County's revenues have continued to decline as well. In particular, our property taxes, we're anticipating about a 5.6% reduction in property taxes in 2011. Of course, that follows on the series of declines that we've come to you before and discussed. We don't anticipate that will get any better in 2011-12. And we don't anticipate growth either, even after next year or the year after, for a number of years. Now, the policies that your board has adopted and the sound fiscal management of your board, as well as the fiscal management of the board and the actions of county departments over the last several years have placed our county in a far better position than a number of our neighboring counties and jurisdictions. And that's very easy to see when we see some of the actions that have had to take place in some of our neighbors. The wide sweeping layoffs, the severe cuts, the programmatic changes that have had to occur in some of our neighbors compared to what we've faced. Some of the county savings that we've seen have been very innovative in some of our departments. What am I talking about? Well, for example, in county-wide reduction in vehicle usage. As you've heard, across the board, departments county-wide, from admin services to facility services, public safety, have reduced both the number of vehicles used and the total numbers of miles driven for a county-wide savings of almost $1.4 million. Indeed, $500,000 alone in public safety and the Sheriff's Department savings. Of that $1.4 million, $500,000 of that is in the Sheriff's Department. Significant savings in total miles driven and number of vehicles. In Health and Human Services, deactivating cell phones and switching providers reduced their monthly expenses by 50%. They've also brought in increased CalWorks funding and restricted transportation and travel, reducing their costs in that area by 60%. Additional areas in public safety, again, deactivating cell phones there and developing a cell phone checkout system has reduced their costs and the number of cell phones in some departments by as much as 58%. Deferring non-critical purchases, reducing critical purchases to a minimum, and reducing bed days by over 80,000 last year, primarily through innovative things such as electronic monitoring and a work release program. These significant cost savings, countywide, have continued to reduce our costs, all the while providing efficient services to our county citizens. Now, this all has had an impact on our fund balance. And when I'm talking about fund balance, I think I need to be clear about what I mean. The fund balance I'm referring to in this case is the undesignated fund balance, or the fund balance rollover, which is the budget savings or the excess revenue in a given year. So in this case, I'm referring to the general fund's excess revenue or budget savings in any given year. This is the fund balance that this has had an impact on in departments. This is primarily due to the reduced expenditures in these past several years in county departments, because as you all know, revenues have declined severely over the past several years, as we've seen and as you've been faced with as a board over the past several years. These highlights that I just mentioned to you offer a glimpse of what we're going to be talking to you and bringing before you next week in the board workshops. If I could turn for a minute to fund balance, I just wanted to offer a few more things to you. Of course, fund balance, as you well know, is a planned component of our budget process. When we built the proposed budget, we anticipated it would be about $27.5 million would be the general fund balance that we would be able to build the 2010-11 budget with. Cost savings measures and the mid-year direction of your board had a direct impact on the year-end fund balance, so much so that we anticipate it will actually be $31 million versus $27.5. And the hiring restrictions adopted by the board have contributed directly to that fund balance. Salary savings, in fact, represents about $8 million of it. The percent of fund balance used on ongoing operations, however, has become an increasing component of the uses of our fund balance. In fact, this graph highlights the uses of fund balance over the past several years. And what you can see here is the blue line represents the amount of fund balance, and this is again the general fund balance over the past several years, and it's been between about between $30 and $40 million. The green line represents the amount of fund balance that has been used on operating costs, and you've seen this grow over the past several years to where Its increasing amounts have been required, particularly as the economy has declined. There's been a need to spend an increasing amount on our operating costs. This use has resulted in limiting our ability to fund other important areas that we've been able to provide resources on and important board priorities that you've placed on investments in the past, such as road overlay, open space, capital projects, and being able to put funding aside for OPEB. Additionally, the general fund reserves that have assisted in balancing the budget over the past several years are declining. Of course, they've gone, the general purpose general fund reserves that were at $17 million have now come to about $8 million in the proposed budget. So they have been used over the past several years, in addition to fund balance, to balance the budget. County pressures additionally will continue to grow, and they remain. Over the next couple years, we're going to see the South Placer Adult Detention Facility, the PERS portfolio losses, and the ever-increasing pressures of health care and OPEB continue to pressure as your board faces difficult choices as we balance our budgets in the coming years. So in conclusion, the board policies and direction over the past several years, including this year's mid-year direction, have had a direct impact on the sound fiscal health of our county, despite all the difficult economic choices we've had to make. And the department's ability to constrain resources over the many years, in addition to the past three, have also had a direct impact on our health as a county, our fiscal health. These efforts have assisted in creating the annual fund balance that is needed and is a part of how we balance our budget every year. However, the fund balance is limited in its ability to continue to address these operating cost shortfalls, as you saw. And these increasing cost pressures that loom on the horizon do warrant consideration of the service delivery changes, some of which you're about to hear about in the following presentations. Before we head into the next portion of the presentation, though, I'd be happy to address any questions you may have.
Questions by board members on this portion? Jeff, I have a couple.
Okay.
First of all, slide 5 discussed cost savings and highlighted the reduction in bed days, utilizing electronic monitoring and work release. Not today, but perhaps next week as we go through the departmental items. If we could have Sheriff's Department or probation, whomever is deemed most appropriate, be prepared to discuss this. What I'm looking for is, as we know, the state is releasing folks at a faster rate, and we heard this morning in public comment Mr. Scott's comments about the rise in the number of police officer deaths recently, and I suspect there's a direct correlation between the state releasing folks earlier and those deaths. What I'd be curious to see is what our recidivism rates had historically been prior to the use of these alternative sentencing methods, whether it's work release or electronic monitoring, and what kind of recidivism we're seeing as a result of utilizing those new methods. And are we within our county seeing any kind of increase in recidivism, or are the programs being successfully completed, and have we not experienced any kind of a spike? So if we could have the departments prepared to address that next week. And then the other question I have is in regard to slide number 8, and that is in regard to the general fund balance and your two different tracking lines. I need a little bit better understanding of the definition of fund balance used for operations versus fund balance rollover. In my mind, I guess I was operating, if you might want to go ahead and throw that slide up there, just so that we are, so to speak, working from the same page. Yep, there you go.
Sorry.
I guess in my mind, I had always operated under the assumption that the blue line, the quote-unquote fund balance, was kind of an operating reserve, if you will, meaning that we budgeted on an annualized basis, as most businesses will. You'll say, here's our what we anticipate expenditures versus revenues. We have a best case and a worst case, and we build in essentially an operating reserve in the anticipation that we do experience some of the worst case. We're still within budget. We still have it covered. What confuses me is this line, the fund balance used for operations. And so if you could maybe spend a little bit of time explaining what that.
Sure. This is intended to portray is that indeed, because as you've stated, that is indeed what we do every year. We do build in fund balance as part of that operating budget, and it is a part of our budget planning process. The nuance we're intending to portray here is that that fund balance is intended to fund one-time items because of the fluctuation in amounts, and it fluctuates, as you can see, between, in this case, about $30 to $40 million, and due to that variance, it is intended for things that are at one time in nature, not things that are operational in nature. And so things that typically in the past that we've been able to fund, such as road overlay, capital outlay, things that are of a one-time nature that are board priorities that we've been able to set aside funding for out of the fund balance, we have not been able to fund in the past several years with as much fund balance because of the pressing need to use this one-time fund balance amount because of the increased pressures on the operational side of our budget.
Okay.
Those amounts have decreased over the past several years.
Okay. So then we are seeing budgeted operational costs coming in perhaps higher than what was originally budgeted at the beginning of the year. I have to assume that if that weren't the case, then that one would essentially be at zero. And again, maybe I'm not understanding, but as I look at those two graphs, if I look at the year that we just completed, the 9-10 fiscal year that we just completed, assuming books are closed and everything is accounted for, what that graph seems to show me is that our actual rollover fund balance was $10 million. We did not have a fund. It would be the delta between the blue line and the green line, correct? Because the green line is dollars that were spent to cover operational costs. Is that what that's showing us? So the true net is a $10 million carryover, if you will, from 9-10 into 10-11?
The intended, well, no, this did all carry over into 10-11.
Okay.
And the ideal would be that this line, the green line, would be down here at zero. And
Right.
the operating costs would be fully covered under our intended operating budget. And this would be available to your board as it was back.
I understand what
Okay.
the ideal is. I guess what I'm getting at is if I'm going to account for my dollars at the end of the year, obviously, ideally, we would like for that green line to be hovering right about the zero mark.
Correct.
And we would like for our blue line to be up where it is, which is nice, which would give us an actual cash carryover year over year of close to $30 million in terms of actual cash carryover into the next year.
Right.
What I think I'm seeing here is we budgeted a fund balance of somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 for 9-10, 33, $34 million. Of that, in order to cover existing operational costs, we spent approximately $24 million. And so our true cash carryover year over year is really that $10 million gap between the two, as opposed to, and if I'm interpreting this incorrectly, that's where I need help.
Yeah.
Yes, can I
Yes, please.
try to explain it a little? I'm Linda Oakman, I work with the County Executive Office. This graph actually doesn't really show us what we spent in operating costs during the year. What this graph shows is the blue line is the fund balance carryover that resulted from the operations from the previous year.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's between the $30 to $40 million. The green line shows what we are budgeting it to, what we are using it for in the budget. And so over time, we used to have we used to budget all of the fund balance carryover to spend on one-time costs, and we actually had additional revenues that we also set aside
So
for
then
reserves,
essentially, I should be looking at almost a year lag. The green, the green is anticipating, and the blue is truing up from the previous year.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and,
All
and
right.
now what did you say? The green is truing up from the previous
No,
year?
the blue is what our fund balance carryover is. The green is anticipation of expenditures
Right, and
of those dollars that carried over from the last fiscal year into the next year. So there should be an equal terminus to those lines. One line should actually extend out a year. Like, for instance, the line should extend out. Obviously, we don't know exactly what our fund balance is for 10-11, but what looking at is the 10-11 number is what we've budgeted, and the 9-10 is more or less our.
Yes, and the 10-11 number is the fund balance that carried over from 9-10 operations. That's what we will begin the budget with.
Okay.
And so the green line is, what this shows is that we have had to use more of our fund balance carryover.
I get it. Yeah, so then, again, going back to the issue of, if you will, expression, but unrestricted cash.
Yes.
Whereas there seems to be a perception that's being promulgated outside of this chamber that we're running around year over year with $30 million in our pocket. Really, year over year, we're looking at about a $10 million cash carryover once you factor what we are budgeting of that fund balance carryover for annual operations in the following year.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So it's really, it's a $10 million operating reserve cushion that we're operating with, as opposed to this $30 million number.
Yes.
Here. So from the standpoint of our total general fund operating budget, which is about, what, $312 million? What's our total general fund? Somewhere in the 300?
Total general fund's about 365, excuse me, 365.
So then the operating reserve that we're working with is 3%.
Yes.
That $10 million is roughly 3%. Thank you.
Okay.
Supervisor Holmes.
Just think it's important to note, I think it was in 05, 6, or 06, 7, we put 20 million of that fund balance to OPEB. And then the following years, I think we put 10 million each year towards OPEB. So that money went to important projects.
Yes, it did.
Thank you.
And if I could just add on that, is that sometimes there's an expression out there that, so what'd you do with 40 million, what'd you do with 30 million, what'd you do with 20? That money, as you sent, was Supervisor Holmes, was money put towards OPEB, to roads overlay, to open space, money spent for those purposes. There's no cumulative fund balance.
Right.
The fund balance is a point in time, and you can see it's getting smaller every year. The good news on this, though, is that your control on expenditures is at least not pushing that line closer up to.
Right, exactly. Brought them almost to parity in terms of their tracking, which you look at the end of 7, 8, that was not a course we wanted to stay on.
Right.
That would have been a bad direction. Supervisor Montgomery.
Yes, thank you. And most of the questions I had were answered through your questions, so thank you. One of the things, slide 7, salary savings represents $8 million of the fund balance. Those are positions that are unfilled, correct?
Yes.
And our expectation is that we're not going to fill those next year. So that savings essentially does not carry over in reality. Am I correct in that?
Well, again, the savings contributed to that fund balance. That $8 million created that $31 million in savings. So kind of the bigger message that we're trying to portray is the reason why you have a fund balance is because you're reducing expenditures. You don't have new revenues. And so there is, as you're well aware, there's pressures on the system to fill positions and provide services at the same time. The restrictions in particular of not filling
what were otherwise identified as funded positions in last year's budget created that savings. You fill those positions, you will use that money up.
No, that's exactly what I'm getting at, that $8 million is pretty close to the actual $10 million that we're talking about in terms of the difference. So again, that's getting back to that roughly $10 million piece that is the true carryover. So that was it. Thank you.
Supervisor Wagner.
And with all of that, what might be useful to budget workshops is to actually have perhaps the same time frame, but reflecting. I think one of the key points here is that whereas fund balance used to be used more for capital projects or one-time expenditures, like contributions to the open space fund, now it's not. Now it's needed for turning on our lights to open the doors and paying salaries. So if you had some kind of comparison as to historical expenditures, I think we all understand clearly what operating expenditures are.
We'll do that.
All right. Questions, other questions by board members? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Bell. We'll move on to Ms. Regan with a nice new hairdo, too.
All right. Good morning, Chairman Euler, members of the board. Becky Regan from the County Executive Office to provide an update on county service delivery options. And joining me for this presentation today are Jim Durfee from Facility Services, Ken Grimm from Public Works, Clark Moots from Administrative Services, Dr. Richard Burton from Health and Human Services, and Wes Zicker from the Community Development Resources Agency. They will be speaking to the specific program areas under consideration today. They will each be presenting analysis that demonstrates cost savings and/or revenue-generating opportunities within their respective departments. And in some areas, they will be seeking authorization for obtaining industry-specific cost quotes through the competitive bid process to assist with further comparative analysis and with any necessary labor discussions as we move forward. I'd like to take a moment before I proceed here to acknowledge a letter of support that we received just this morning from Wendy Gehrig, who is the CEO of the Roseville Chamber of Commerce. This letter was sent in reference to a presentation by Tom Miller at the Government Relations meeting of the Roseville Chamber of Commerce on August 6th, just a few days ago. The letter reports that the Board of Directors, who unanimously voted to support our efforts to privatize some of the services currently being performed by our county personnel, they wanted to commend us for that, and in particular they wanted to note that this plan is intended to be implemented through attrition and will not cause layoffs to current employees, and they thought was a particularly important aspect of our project. So we would like to acknowledge that letter and thank them for that communication to us. Jeff provided a backdrop on some of the challenges facing Placer County as we continue to grapple with some of the impacts of the most significant fiscal crisis since the 1930s. Now termed the Great Recession, the economic decline that began in late 2007 and steadily gathered momentum in 2008 has resulted in the steepest decline in state and local tax receipts on record. Your board took a number of measures to mitigate projected funding gaps, including hiring restrictions, office closures, realigning existing resources to areas of increased workload, reducing one-time and ongoing operating costs, prudent use of reserves, and implementing employee-generated cost savings recommendations. And as Jeff highlighted, departments are to be commended for the actions they have taken to operate within available resources over these last couple of years. Collectively, these measures have positioned Placer County to avoid having to make many of the severe staffing and service reductions occurring in other jurisdictions. However, given the magnitude of the economic decline and the protracted nature of the economic recovery, your board recognized the need for taking additional actions to ensure the continued fiscal integrity of the county. At the February 23, 2010 Strategic Budget and Policy briefing, your board authorized the County Executive Officer to return with concepts for long-term structural changes to county delivery. And while reducing long-term costs was a key consideration in the development of these concepts, several other factors were considered, such as ensuring cost-effective and high-quality services, valuing existing employees, maintaining flexibility in responding to service needs, ensuring that service delivery methods are sustainable, recognizing benefits of competition for optimizing service delivery to constituents. This slide is a graphic of the service model that we are seeking to achieve through these efforts. And on April 27, 2010, staff returned to your board with a presentation on service delivery concepts, on the differing models and recent utilization trends in local government. Staff also reviewed various delivery approaches utilized by Placer County over the years to meet fluctuating service needs in a cost-effective manner. These approaches have included blended use of public employees, contract employees, contracts with other government agencies, contracts with for-profit and not-for-profit entities, and use of extra help and retired annuitants. At the April 27th meeting, your board also reviewed 3 service delivery options for the provision of grounds maintenance at the new Dry Creek Park in western Placer County. Those included public employee models, intergovernmental, and private service delivery models. Based on the results of the cost comparisons, your board authorized the development of private contracts for service provision at this site. And with the goal of replicating the cost savings potential demonstrated in the Dry Creek Park analysis, your board authorized the county executive to evaluate and recommend service model options for other county services. This direction is consistent with the provisions in the charter of Placer County that allows for contract utilization to provide any services required of or performed by the county if it is deemed to be more economical to do so. The following assessments consider current and historical service delivery models, legal and regulatory frameworks for the service, policy and labor implications, cost and financial structures, and requirements for long-term service sustainability for each of these service areas. And consistent with the findings from the April 27th presentation on Dry Creek Park, these assessments also conclude that use of new or expanded contracts with the private sector or with other government entities would be the most cost-effective option for delivering high-quality, sustainable services in the future. Your board is requested to authorize a series of actions that will enable departments to obtain industry-specific cost quotes necessary for further analysis and for necessary labor discussions before we return to your board in the future with final recommendations. Each presenter will review their analysis, address any questions, and seek board direction for each program area. And unless there are any other questions for me at this time, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Jim Durfee, Director of Facility Services.
Questions of Becky at this time? Seeing none, good morning, Mr. Durfee.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, Jim Durfee, Director of Facility Services.
Time to update the photo.
The camera adds a lot of pounds. Or actually breaking your jaw removes a lot of pounds. I'm here today to talk about a couple of different things. We've done further analysis of one of our park sites, Squaw Valley Park, which actually was one of the topics of discussion back on April 27th, and then later I'm going to talk about custodial services. I did want to take just very briefly to follow up on Jeff's presentation a little bit. One of the things that didn't get discussed was that the departments, and I'm going to brag for all of the department heads just a little bit here, the departments in managing the budgets through the year not only were able to return monies back to the general fund in terms of fund balance, but that was in spite of inflation and increased costs in a lot of different areas. Our staffing costs did go up. Even though we reduced the numbers of staff, the per unit cost went up, utilities are up, fuel is up, a lot of those kinds of things that we purchase. So we actually absorbed a lot of inflation along with those savings, and I think that shouldn't get lost in the discussion. Some costs do continue to rise. As we talk about parks and the delivery of parks maintenance services, one of the things that we talked about back in April was in the ability to perhaps use an intergovernmental interjurisdictional model, and the Squaw Valley Park is probably the best approach for that particular site, is to investigate that further. Squaw Valley Park, of course, is our only large facility up in that area. We currently contract for the maintenance of all of our parks-related facilities inside the Tahoe Basin with the various service providers up there, the Tahoe City PUD and the North Tahoe PUD in particular. We currently, though, maintain the Squaw Valley Park with county staff, which means that one day a week we send someone in a county truck from Auburn up to Squaw Valley Park to spend 5 or 6 hours working at that park doing maintenance, and then they drive back to Auburn. Not a particularly efficient way to provide that service. What we're asking for today is that you authorize the department to formally discuss and solicit bids from those other jurisdictional service providers in the area, particularly to include both of the PUDs at the lake and the Squaw Valley Public Services District, and then any other interested jurisdictions in that area, to provide us with bids for the same scope of work that we provide today at that park, only without the travel time included. So we'll be asking for that permission today. What we would do with the person that currently drives to Squaw Valley 1 day a week is simply reassign that person down here in the Auburn area to backfill for other reductions that we've taken. The Parks Division hasn't suffered an awful lot of attrition. We have a fairly young workforce in that group. Those are good paying jobs. We don't have a lot of turnover in that area, and we haven't had a lot of attrition. We've lost one position over the last couple of years. We did have a couple of vacant positions that we had been holding vacant in order to cover for growth. We have defunded and eliminated those positions, so those are gone. And we have stopped using extra help temporarily. That's how we've squeezed our budget in that in the labor side of the parks budget. Typically, we used to bring on about 5 or 6 extra help workers for 1,000 hours each over the summer. That's a very cost-effective way to augment our workforce during the growing season. That's what we should be doing. Temporarily, in order to protect that budget, we had stopped using those funds. Last year, we were able to use some reassignments from CEDRA. That program has now ended. So we have, in effect, we have cut a lot of hours, several thousand hours out of our workforce through budget cuts, but they haven't been either through attrition or through the loss of permanent staff. This move at Squaw Valley Park helps us bring back a few hours back into the Auburn area, and ultimately through attrition we'll be back with other approaches. So on the Squaw Valley Park, we are going to be asking for approval for your board to solicit bids from those jurisdictions. If you don't have questions on the park side of things, I'd like to move to custodial.
I see Supervisor Holmes' light is on.
Yeah, you mentioned that you're not using extra help during the summer. Is that one of the reasons why you have a 7-day-a-week work schedule?
No, actually, that was just another move we made to make ourselves more efficient and cost effective. The nature of grounds work in general is that it's more efficient and more effective when the people, when the users of a campus or a site aren't there. The parking lots are empty, the sidewalks aren't being used all day long. We can more effectively get in and get the work done. So we shifted last year. We shifted all of our staff to schedules where each staff member was working at least one weekend day, so that we were covering sites on those days when the campuses weren't being used. It's simply a way to be more cost effective.
And then the question I have on the park related item is, I'm curious why we would just be soliciting bids from jurisdictions, why we don't simply create
Outstanding question.
An open RFP and just let jurisdictions bid along with private contractors?
Very, very good question. We have looked over the years for contract landscape services on the east side of the county, and they simply aren't available on a continuing basis. If you drive through the area, you don't have businesses that have lots of extensive landscaping because of the nature of the geography and the climate. What we find is that we'd be bringing contractors out of the Reno area or from the east or from the west side to go up there to do that work, and it simply has not been found to be cost effective. And we've looked at this over the years. We've looked a number of times. The rest of the county, the west side, those types of services are very available. In having some preliminary discussions with, in particular, the Tahoe City PUD, they've done the same thing. They've looked extensively for that type of service, and they haven't been successful either. So,
would issuing an open RFP not kind of simply validate that?
It certainly would, and we can undertake that as part of the process. We've got essentially we've got the scope of work all set up and available to do that, and if that's your board's desire, we can certainly do that.
I just don't see the downside. I mean, it may very well illustrate clearly what it is you're saying, and that is that the only service providers that are interested are coming from too far away, and that would be reflected in their bids.
One thing I would point out, there is certainly an administrative cost to doing what you're suggesting, and the scope of this particular contract is probably is small. It's probably less than $20,000 a year. That's another consideration. It's not a particularly large contract that we're talking about.
Okay. Thank you. I don't see any other questions in regard to the park, so if you want to move on to custodial services, I believe that was your next.
Custodial services may be the poster child for attrition in the county. It is an entry-level job, and our workforce in custodial services is comprised of really two different groups. We've got a number of aging, long-term employees who are starting to retire on a fairly rapid basis now. We also get a lot of young people that come in. This is in a lot of cases their first or second job. They stay for a while, gain some experience, and move on. It's a relatively transient job classification, if you will. And when you combine that with the fact that a lot of our workforce is aging and retiring, we're seeing very extensive attrition in the custodial services. As a matter of fact, over 3 years, we've gone from 41 funded positions to 34 funded positions, and I had another retirement last week after we wrote this, so I'm down at another position from those levels. So we're seeing very severe attrition in that group. We also have, because we haven't filled positions over the past 3 years within that group, frankly, we have cut our workforce to below what I would call even a sustainable level right now. We are at a point where we do not keep up with the workload in custodial services. The buildings are starting to suffer from that. I'm starting to hear more and more complaints from our client departments, and they're valid complaints. We're not doing as much work as we need to be doing in the buildings. Our recommendation today is that you authorize us to actually extend a contract, and I'll get into this, our contract with Pride Industries, but we're going to be asking that you extend our contract with Pride Industries to cover approximately an additional 130,000 square feet of building space in addition to what they already do, and that would be the equivalent of about 4 full-time equivalent positions. So that would give us a little bit of cushion within our workforce. By a little bit of background, we've historically provided the vast majority of our custodial services in county facilities through county staff. There have been some exceptions where we had leased facilities where the lease came along with custodial services. But of most note would be Building B down at the Bill Santucci Justice Center. When we constructed that building, your board authorized a contract for custodial services, complete turnkey custodial services with Pride Industries. We've been operating that contract now for a couple of years. We've had very good success with Pride. They provide us with well-trained, security-cleared, bonded personnel. We find that there's an approximately 45% savings on a per square foot basis as compared with our other custodial services. Custodial services in general are very available on the commercial contract market. It's a service that is typically contracted. Almost all businesses use custodial services for contract custodial services for their buildings. It's a very easy service for us to track from a contract perspective. The tasks are well laid out, they're well defined, and it's very easy for us to track contract compliance. In this particular case, I've had discussions excuse me, with my counterparts at the City of Roseville, City of Lincoln, and the City of Rockland. None of those jurisdictions are interested in providing contract services. They would have to hire permanent personnel in order to do that. They're not interested in providing that. So that service was not available on an interjurisdictional basis. And so we felt that the best approach in order to augment our current staffing was to provide some outside contract services. Again, this is a contract service that we could do an RFP for, but we have a very successful relationship with Pride, and our recommendation really is that we expand that relationship. Pride Industries, as your board is well aware, not only do they provide good services to us, but they provide a very important societal benefit as well, and we're actually quite proud of our relationship with them. So unless I can answer other questions, I would reiterate that our recommendation is that you authorize us to bring back to your board an expansion, if you will, of our contract with Pride Industries to add an additional 130,000 square feet to their services.
Okay. I think what we will do is we will take the individual departmental requests for authorization as the department heads give them, rather than waiting to the end for one motion. It's kind of all-encompassing. So what I'd like to do at this point is see if any board members have any additional questions of Mr. Durfee before I ask if there are any members of the public that have any questions on his recommendation, and then bring it back to the board for a motion as it relates to Mr. Durfee's request. So any board members have any questions or comments? Seeing none, any members of the public wish to address the board on Mr. Durfee's presentation here? Okay. Do we have a motion in regard to soliciting competitive bids that are jurisdictionally related for the Squaw Valley Park, as well as expansion of existing contracts for custodial services? Motion, Supervisor Holmes, second, Supervisor Montgomery. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Tom, do you have a question?
Yes, I just want to clarify, as embodied in the full staff report, we have an obligation to engage our labor unions in this discussion, and that's embodied in all these actions by reference.
Understood. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you, Jim. Okay, we are moving on to Mr. Grimm.
Good morning, Chairman, board members. My name is Ken Grimm with the Department of Public Works. The next service we want to talk about is the county's Placer Commuter Express, and that is a transit service providing express service between communities along Interstate 80 in Placer County down to the city of Sacramento and the employment centers located down there. The program was started as a pilot program in 2004. At that time, we hired a contractor to supply the entire turnkey service, which included the buses. We started with 2 runs. It's been a very successful service. We actually offer 4 runs now each day to Sacramento and coming back. In past years, we've actually had times when people could not get on the bus because of the popularity of that service. It is also one of our highest return for transit services in a operating platform where we have 10 to 15% of the service being funded by the users, what we call fare box recovery. The Placer Commuter Express is approximately 60 to 65%, so a very substantial service. I think we have ridership now of approximately 70,000 riders per year. Very successful service. But in recent years, we've been able to obtain some grants to purchase our own buses, a very expensive component of providing the service. We've had American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. Those are the federal stimulus dollars. We've had federal transportation dollars in the form of congestion, mitigation, and air quality funds, as well as Proposition 1B funds for transit services or transit operations, which were approved by the voters, I believe, in 2006. So with that, we were able to purchase 5 of our own commuter buses that we are now putting into service. Those new commuter buses, they're much more modern. They also have substantially more seating. Where our contractor was providing buses with 46 or 52 seated buses, we now have buses that seat 57 people. And for the same cost, we actually have a 10 to 20% increase in what we can provide in that service. In addition to that, these buses also allow for stand-up, where people can stand, which is a long way to stand if you're coming from Sacramento up. But when the alternative is not getting a seat in the bus, it's a great flexibility to have in our system. That isn't a problem right now, but with the growth of the system, it will inevitably happen. To date, we've received all 5 of those buses. Our last one will go into service here imminently, probably within the next few weeks. And so it's a great time to revisit our service delivery model. Again, we contract out this service here today. But what we're hoping is, in the past, we had to find people who supplied buses as well as drivers, and that was very limiting in the pool of people who could supply that service. With us supplying the buses, we believe now that we'll have a much more competitive field. We hope that leads to lower costs. And so what we're asking today is asking for your approval to issue a request for proposals for operators not supplying the buses, but only supplying the drivers and the operating of that system. We'll take that opportunity to compare costs to the various other deliveries, including county staff people, be able to share that with your board before coming to a final decision at a future date. And so this is really important now in the transit field because transit funding is substantially down. The local transportation funded, which is funded through the sales tax, the general statewide sales tax, has been substantially down. In addition to that, a portion of the gasoline sales tax has always been dedicated to transit. That has been very volatile. It's gone away. It's come back again this year in a limited form. And so trying to stretch our dollars to provide that same service is becoming much, much more important. And so we're asking again for your approval today to issue that RFP, to solicit for a proposal for those services, of which we'll then come back to you with some final recommendations. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, board members have any questions? And seeing none, any members of the public wish to address the board on Mr. Grimm's item here? Okay, do we have a motion? Second. Motion Wygant, second Holmes. All in favor, please say aye. 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 Opposed? None. Thank you very much. Morning, Clark.
Good morning, Chairman Euler, members of the board. Clark Moots, Director of Administrative Services. I'm here today to request your approval to solicit competitive bids in order to obtain information for cost comparison analysis of two-way radio vehicle installation. And for a matter of history, the Administrative Services Department's Telecommunication Division maintains the county's voice data and two-way radio networks. During the past several years, two-way radio technologies have migrated from an analog to digital platform, which has provided the department with a unique opportunity to analyze the management and completion of lower two-way radio vehicle installations performed by the Telecommunications Technician Classification Series. The Telecommunications Division provides all two-way public radio installation services for all the county departments, including the Sheriff, Public Works, Probation, Office of Emergency Services, Health and Human Services, Facility Services, District Attorney, the Building Department, County Fire Departments, and also the Independent Fire Districts. Installations vary in complexity by type of vehicle and or heavy equipment purchased, replaced, or removed from service. And approximately 1,300 two-way radios are supported throughout this county. The proposed plan would be to utilize support vendor contracts for the completion of the lower-level duties currently performed by the Telecommunications Technician Classification Series, as attrition occurs and or as new technologies are implemented. Currently, two full equivalent positions perform these duties, which is 10% of my telecommunications workforce. No legal obligation exists to perform these services internally, and requesting departments are responsible for all charges incurred, whether performed by county staff or support vendors. And initial estimates from my department indicate that the cost savings associated with contracting out lower-level functions such as radio vehicle installations would vary between 25 to 40% lower than the cost of performing these tasks in-house. And the local communication companies specializing in government and public safety grade installations, including this installation of radios, antennas, and scanners, are readily available in the Auburn and also the Lake Tahoe area through Reno. Administrative recommend your approval to conduct competitive bid for support vendor contracts so we can, in order to obtain cost quotes for two-way installations, in order to further provide comparative analysis to your board. At this time, I'm available for any questions you have.
Thank you for that report. Supervisor Montgomery.
Thank you. I did have a question as to what you mean when you say as attrition occurs and or as new technologies are implemented. What is the implication of the second half of that statement for current employees?
Okay, for current employees, as new technologies occur, the current employees don't have the requisite skill set to maintain that technology. Local vendors do at this point in time. We offer training and support, but this technology has changed and shifted. And so the duties are shifting to our higher level analyst series is where it occurs. We would redirect those employees to other work within our organization as appropriate. So vis-a-vis if a telecommunication technician, which I have 3 in my whole entire organization. If the one were, say they retired or left the county service from the telephone side, we would then shift one of those technicians over to that side instead, and then look for contracting services for that other individual.
Thank you.
Other questions by board members? Seeing none, any members of the public wish to address the board on Mr. Moot's item here? All right, we have a motion on this. We have a motion, Holmes, second Wygant, in order to authorize Mr. Moots to solicit competitive bids in regard to two-way radio vehicle installations. All in favor, please say aye. 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 Opposed? None? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. As Dr. Burton is coming forward, a number of folks, I think, have shown up for our 10:30 timed item in regard to the Celebration Community Fellowship Church. We're just wrapping up our department head stuff here, or actually our 9:45 timed item we're working through, and then we immediately upon conclusion of this item, we will take the 10:30 item.
Good morning, Board. Rich Burton, Director of Health and Human Services. First, as I start this item, I'd like to compliment our dental staff that for years have provided excellent dental services to hundreds of people each year, hundreds of our residents that need urgent dental services. In the last year, a number of developments have taken place where we need to look at our service delivery model and reassess and evaluate other models as we go into the future. In 1982, the state realigned services and made it a county requirement to provide dental services for those very low-income adults that don't otherwise have access to dental services. In 1988, the Board of Supervisors here directed that we provide our program in parallel to what the state dental cal services were, and that's the process that we've been using for a number of years. In this last year, the state of California evaluated the dental services, reduced the dental services to those that are federally required, and in that way also reduced funding for our clinic to have a sustainable model as we look to the future. This morning I'm asking that the Board provide or support our staff recommendation to go forward with the required Bielenson hearing sometime likely in the month of September in order to have a public discussion of the alignment of our dental services moving forward to be those that are federally required and have them be in aligned with the state dental cal services, and also to move forward with looking at RFP or bid process to see what the private sector might be able to offer as an alternative, sustainable, fiscally appropriate dental service model as we move forward. We anticipate significant fiscal savings for county fund dollars as we move forward. In the last few weeks, we've had at least 2 providers express interest in evaluating, participating in the RFP process, and even this morning as I'm in the board chamber, another provider sent me an email, said, I saw the agenda and I'd like to you more. So we think it would be a prudent move to move forward, help us evaluate to make sure that we're as cost effective as we can and that we can continue to provide those dental services that are most urgent to those that are most unable to provide for the dental care for themselves. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions to Dr. Burton by board members. Any members of the public wish to address the board on this item? All right, seeing none, does the board have a preference on this item? Motion Holmes, second Wygant to approve Dr. Burton's recommendations. All in favor, please say aye. 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 Opposed? None. Thank you very much. Finally, Mr. Zicker.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
I have to say, I kind of took a shot at Mr. Durfee on his picture. Yours is obviously very contemporary, considering you're wearing the same shirt and tie. I suspect you took that this morning on your way here for inclusion in the presentation.
I cannot tell a lie. I must have done it. That is one of the most unique coincidences.
Very contemporary photo. Right?
I couldn't have planned that if I tried.
About Mr. Zicker, handsome is as handsome does.
Or go with what works, right?
Flattery will get you everywhere. Yeah, thank you, members of the board. My situation coming up here this morning to talk to you is a little bit different from the other department heads in that I want to report what we consider to be a successful rearrangement of staff, loaning of staff to balance our workload and our staff. Clearly, land development work and engineering surveying is set up to do land development projects, plan checking, improvement plan checking, reviewing of maps, and construction inspection. With that workload going down, what we've done is continue a tradition that we've had for many, many years, going back to when we were a division of the Department of Public Works. We have a pool of talent of engineers and surveyors and technicians who do the kind of tasks I just mentioned. Other departments have need of those same kind of staff. We've done 3 things to balance that workload. We have formally transferred 3 people to other departments, where the other departments, such as environmental engineering, had need for an engineer. We had an engineer transfer over there. That's one way we balanced our workforce. The second thing we've done is we have semi-permanently loaned 3 or 4 people to the Department of Public Works, for example, where we actually have 3 people sitting upstairs in Public Works in our building, working for them, an engineer, an associate engineer, a senior engineer, and an engineering technician, construction inspector. So we haven't formally taken the action to transfer them out, but we receive what I loosely call revenue, and the accounting staff doesn't like that term, but it's funds that come into our department to balance the cost of those staff. And lastly, we've contracted out internally, for example, with the redevelopment agency, where we are providing construction management services for the Rock Creek Plaza work that's underway today. We have an associate engineer and an engineering technician, construction inspector working out there pretty much full-time while it's underway because it's a short-term project. But again, the redevelopment agency is providing funding to us for that task. We've done these things semi-formally in some cases, informally in others, and with RDA we actually have an agreement to provide that staff. We have discussed with other jurisdictions providing the same staff, and by way of note, I know that LA County, for example, I talked to their Deputy Director of Public Works. They provide engineering, surveying, and technical services, road services to other cities in their county. We've discussed that with other jurisdictions, haven't made any deals yet, but we're aware of it and we're open to that kind of work. By way of comparison, our revenue from improvement plan checking, our development revenue, if you will, last fiscal year was about almost $1.2 million. Our revenue from this transfer out, contract out, loaning out is about $900,000. So we've been able to recover resources, keep our people employed, keep these people in the county with their experience, and so on. And we believe our costs are extremely competitive with any other method the county would have to get the work done. So again, a little bit of a success story, if you will. We've preserved staff. We've provided a good service to other departments that are not general fund, thereby reducing our hit on the general fund. I think it's been a win-win for many, many people and many departments. So with that, if you have any questions, our request for the board is your direction to continue with this process of retaining staff and seeking out other work internally and perhaps externally to generate some more revenue.
Questions by board members? Seeing none, any members of the public wish to address the board on this item? Okay, do we have board affirmation of Mr. Zicker's already engaged strategy?
Moved in the affirmative.
Okay, we have a motion, Holmes, and a second, Montgomery, to, I guess, tell you to stay the course on this practice. So, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Aye, opposed, none.
Thank you.
I believe I've worked you right through your next couple of slides, and so it'll take us to concluding remarks. Any members of the board have any concluding remarks for staff on this item? I do. First of all, thank you. Obviously never easy when it comes when department heads, managers are asked to come up with a new way of providing services in constricting budget times. And you know, we elected a governor 7 years ago who promised to come in and blow up the boxes, and it seems that all we've done at the state level is build more boxes and stack them on top of the existing boxes. And here at the county, I'd like to commend first the individual department heads and second the CEO's office for the initiative that's been taken to figure out how to continue to maintain the high level of service that we provide here in Placer County in a time of declining budgets. You've been creative. I know it has been a challenge and will continue to be a challenge, but I, for one, am very confident in the leadership that has been shown in terms of continuing to place Placer County as one of the best service providers in the state, dealing with what we all are dealing with statewide in this tough economic time. So thank you to you department heads for what you've done. Keep up the good work, and thank you to the CEO's office for continuing to help with managing us through this. Those would be my concluding remarks. Supervisor Holmes?
Well, I concur wholeheartedly with those remarks and just want to thank you all, the department heads and CEO staff, for actually exceeding certainly my expectations and I'm sure the expectations of the board. So thank you very much.
All right. With that, all our department heads can go back to their real work now, and we can move on with our 10:30 timed item. I guess we can't dismiss all of our department heads. We do have a couple of items here that Mr. Johnson, why don't you wait just one moment? We'll let some folks kind of filter out here. Now, I received an email this morning in regard to a request to continue this item. Is that what I recall reading? Okay. So, Mr. Johnson, are you prepared to speak to that this morning?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Michael Johnson with the Community Development Resource Agency. The item before the board is a third-party appeal of a Planning Commission approval for the Celebration Community Fellowship Church. As the chair just noted, the county is recently in receipt of a request from the United Auburn Indian community expressing interest in this proposed action and requesting that the tribe be given some additional time to review the proposal to see what impact, if any, it may have on United Auburn Indian community resources. Staff would concur with this request, and staff would support continuing this item to the September 14th agenda if it's the board's desire.
I believe was the August 24th agenda, or is that a new
August
request?
28th? I have not seen the request, so I apologize.
And it can be continued to another time, should that be the pleasure of the board, but I think we were looking at August 24th at 10:15, if it's to be continued.
I'm sorry, what was that in?
August 24th at 10:15?
Or if there's another date that meets the appellant as well as the applicant.
Yeah, I guess if we're going to be continuing it, are 2 weeks enough? First of all, that would be my first question. Second question, obviously, I'd like to hear, Tony has a question. Let's go, Tony, why don't you go ahead and ask your question, Michael?
Yeah, this sort of just came up this morning, and I've heard about it. I just want to double check, where are we on the 90 days for the appeal? We have to commence a public hearing within 90 days, and I don't know exactly where we are within that circumstances. And
the appeal was filed in prior to the May 27th hearing.
Yeah, the commission approved it on May 27th, so we're obviously within the 90 days right now.
June 7th is when the appeal came in.
So I have some time.
As long as we hear it sometime in September.
So the board can continue it up to 90 days without the approval of the appellant and the applicant, but it would be nice to hear from them.
Right, right. So the request that we're being asked to consider right at this time, as opposed to the entire project, is simply continuing the item. I would suggest we might want to look at perhaps September as opposed to the 24th, given the nature of what I believe the folks requesting the continuance, the tribe, would want to look at. I don't know if 2 weeks gives them the time that they're looking for. So if there is a representative of the appellant, is it the appellant themselves that are looking for the continuation, or is it yet somebody else?
It's somebody not associated with the appellants. It's the representatives from the United Auburn Indian community.
Interesting. Okay. Then let's hear from the appellant and then the applicant on the issue of continuing this item. We have a third-party request to continue the item. I'd like to hear from the appellant. I believe that would be Mr. Ryberg. Is that what I'm seeing as my staff report notes say? Is there anybody representing the appellant, the people who filed the appeal on the approval of this project? Is there anybody that can speak to the request for a continuance?
That's interesting. Never had that. I don't think I've ever seen
Yes,
that.
ma'am.
April Moore. I'm not a member of the Chayalka Maidu, but I was on the project site 2 times as a partial monitor, and I don't think they realized that they needed to be here.
Were they anticipating a continuance? Is that why?
I kind of think so. That would be my guess at this point in time.
Okay.
Otherwise, they probably would have been here. They have a gentleman named Grayson Cooney who is their representative. He's their cultural liaison, and he was on site during this project. So that would be a wise decision to do at this point in time.
Okay.
To get a continuance.
But nobody who has filed the appeal is here.
No,
nor
they're not.
anybody that has been authorized to speak on behalf of the person who has filed the appeal is here.
none of them are here.
Okay. Thank you very much, ma'am. Then if we may hear from the applicant, do we have a representative of the church, the Celebration Community Fellowship Church, that is able to speak on their behalf? Yeah. Wow.
Let's see what the church says.
Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning, board members. I'm George Atterbury, the project engineer, and I'm here with the project archaeologist. And it just seems unfair that we've done our due diligence, and it seems unfair that we are, we have to come to the hearing to hear this. This happened before, the same thing. We got to the hearing, and it got postponed. We would like to know about these things a little bit earlier.
So I think what I'm hearing is it would be your desire that this item be heard today.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry?
Maybe a short recess, so I could talk to the applicant's representative.
Okay. Is that?
Just not yet, sure.
All right. What is being requested of me by council is that we have just a very brief recess so that council can step down and have a quick chat with you folks. So what we're going to do is we will recess for 5 minutes, come back right at 11 o'clock, pick this up, and determine if we're going to move forward with the hearing today or if we're going to continue the item. So thank you.
The 90-day rule is
with the applicant, and I believe is in a position to advise the board right now of what our options are regarding this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the time to have this brief recess to talk to the applicant. As the matter now stands, the hearing is set and noticed and properly noticed and served upon all parties. The appellant has not appeared. The applicant, in conversations with me, is interested in proceeding with their hearing, which frankly will not be a very long hearing if the appellant's not present to make a presentation. Nevertheless, staff go through the process and make their presentation. We have a third-party request for a continuance from United Auburn Indian Community. Our ordinances not grant them standing to make a formal request, but nevertheless, they are a governmental agency locally known to the county, and the board may or may not choose to commence the hearing and continue the hearing simply upon that request alone. So the choice is whether the board wants to continue it based upon the request of a third party who doesn't have standing under the county ordinances, which the board can do, continue with the hearing at the request of the applicant, and I think that those are sort of the choices.
Okay. I'd like to get a sense of my colleagues. I'd like to begin with Supervisor Montgomery. It's your district.
Yeah. I would encourage this board, out of our longstanding relationship with the United Auburn Indian Community, to defer to their request. While they may not have standing, I think it's important that we maintain our good relationship with them and honor their request that this be deferred.
Okay.
Well, I would ask that it be returned to this board as soon as it can be scheduled. I would leave that
My
to the
understanding
board.
is that we would need to hear it on the 24th in order to meet the 90-day deadline.
Correct.
So it would be 2 weeks from now.
August 24th at 10:15.
Is what we were looking at. Before I entertain a motion on the item, or on continuing the item, I would like to hear from the applicant in regard to their thoughts on the request for a continuation at this point.
Good morning again. I'm George Atterbury, the project engineer, and we want to go ahead right now. So we're ready. That was your question, right?
That essentially, yeah, we're being asked to continue it for 2 weeks. And, okay, thank you, if you have nothing else. So Supervisor Montgomery, is that in the form of a motion that you would request that we continue this item to 10:15 on the 24th?
So moved, yes.
Okay, do we have a second on the motion? Second. Okay, we have a motion, Montgomery, second, Wygant. Any other board members have any comments or questions? Let's roll call then, please.
Montgomery?
Yes.
Wygant?
Yes.
Holmes?
Yes.
Euler?
Aye. Okay, this item has been continued now to the 24th. Yes.
Can we ask the board to give direction to staff to make sure both the applicant and appellants receive formal notice of this continuance to this date, that it's reconfirmed with the appellant that their presence is required if they intend to proceed with their appeals, and that we formally notice United Auburn Indian Community that their request was for continuance was only granted to August 24th at 10:15, and whatever they expect to do or see should be done before that, because this matter is now set for the 24th of August. Would that be something the board would?
Yes.
I think without objection, the board would adopt that recommendation, direct staff thusly. So those of you that showed up to hear this item, we will see you in 2 weeks. All right, if I could just ask folks that were here for that item to go ahead and proceed on out, and we will move on with our 10 o'clock timed item. This is also a planning department related item in regard to Miners Ridge Family Apartments. Good morning, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before the board this morning is a third-party appeal of the Planning Commission's approval of the Miners Ridge Family Apartment Project located over off Silver Bend Way in the Bowman area. There are two different appeals that are being heard this morning, one from Mario Ferranti and William Pryor regarding Condition 19, dealing with access to the property. The second being from Dr. Dale Smith regarding issues with the environmental document for the proposed project. Today's presentation will be made by Planner Mike Wells.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Miners Ridge is a 64-unit affordable apartment development that was approved by the Planning Commission on May 13th. It's located on a 6.2-acre property off of Silver Bend Way behind the Raleigh Shopping Center in the Bowman area of North Auburn. The project consists of 8 two-story buildings with 8 apartments each, a community building, a swimming pool, and a tot lot. It will access off of Silver Bend Way. North is up this way, south is this way, so Silver Bend is right here. Project access will be here on a 25-foot driveway, providing parking here for 132 spaces, which is the required parking. Other site improvements will include a sewer lift station and a stormwater detention facility, which will be constructed in the south portion of the property. There are currently 2 private road easements on the property. One is a 50-foot private road and public utility easement that crosses the southern portion of the property between the Pryor property on the east and the Rothrock property on the west. And that is this 50-foot easement through here. The second private road easement is a 25-foot wide easement and public utility easement along the west property line that is half of a 50-foot easement that fronts onto the Rosine and Rothrock properties on the west. And that's the 25 and 25 along that side. The site is currently undeveloped, but past uses include a pear orchard until the 1950s, staging disposal site for I-80 construction project in the late 1950s, and most recently is a temporary construction yard for a PCWA pipeline project in the area. The entitlement history, two key things here. One is the Silver Bend Apartments, which we've heard about in the past, which was approved in January 2002, and Ridgeview Villas, which was approved in April of 2005. Remember, Silver Bend was a 72-unit affordable apartment complex that was appealed to the board in March of 2002. At that time, the board denied the appeal, and then RAID, which was a citizens group from the area, challenged the neg deck in court. The court found the document was inadequate regarding biological impacts and mitigation deferral. Following that determination, RAID, the county, and the applicant entered into a settlement agreement where RAID agreed not to challenge an ownership type of project, and the property owner agreed not to provide affordable units beyond that was required by the county's inclusionary housing ordinance. This restriction, the settlement agreement, expired on March 31st, 2008. The second entitlement that we've had on this property is for the Ridgeview Villas project, which is a 64-unit development townhome development that your board approved, along with the mitigated neg deck, the tentative map and permit, and density bonus. All of this was in March of 2006. Since that time, the redevelopment agency in the county acquired the property in 2008. They went and solicited development proposals for the site and selected USA Properties Fund to develop this site. The development plans are the Miners Ridge apartments that your board is considering today. After staff received the application materials and studies, we determined that the project represented only a change in the type of residential use of the project site, from condos to apartments. The second thing, the project would not generate any impacts beyond those that were addressed in the original mitigated neg deck was approved for the Ridgeview Villa projects. a couple years ago. And the third thing was there would not be any increase in the levels of significance of the impacts that were addressed in that mitigated neg deck. With that in mind, staff concluded the proper entitlement for this project would be to modify the original use permit for Ridgeview Villas to allow for 64 apartments rather than 64 townhomes. We also determined that an addendum to the previously approved mitigated neg deck was the appropriate sequence for this project. We took it to the Commission on May 13th of this year, and on a 6-zip vote, they approved the project. Following that, 2 appeals were filed. We're here today. One appeal is from Mr. Ferrante and Pryor, and the second one is from Smith. We'll talk about Mr. Ferrante and Pryor first. I've always stated there are concerns related to having access along the 25-foot private road easement on the project site, and they wanted the wording of Condition 19 changed from may include the delivery of an irrevocable offer of dedication to shall include. This would provide them the assurance that they had access along that easement. They do want assurance they have access to Silver Bend Way, and they also want assurance that this driveway will connect to their 50-foot easement and that the driveway that's being proposed for the project meets county standards. The applicant has assured Mr. Ferrante and Mr. Pryor that they will have access to this driveway when this project is developed. Also, staff looked at the development potential in the adjoining properties and determined that under current zoning, 20 lots could be created on these parcels. Mr. Ferrante and Mr. Pryor have been assured that the 25-foot driveway that's being proposed for this project will provide adequate capacity not only to serve development on their property, but the surrounding properties as well. Their second issue of their appeal related to perimeter fencing of the site. The only fencing that's going to be required of this project is 6-foot metal fencing, wrought iron fencing on the south property line, and this is primarily a safety issue because of the proximity of Forest Hill Road and the steep drop-off there. Any other fencing on the site will be subject to design review, and no fencing will be in place that would block access from their property onto this property. The second appeal was from Dr. Smith. He presented several issues in his appeal. First was his objection to the use of an addendum to an approved mitigated neg deck as the appropriate CEQA review. His view that a change from townhomes to apartments could result in new impacts. For the reasons we stated earlier, an addendum is the appropriate method to address the CEQA issues, as the project will generate no new impacts and will not increase the significance of any impacts that have been previously identified. His second issue is the project did not identify or consider existing site contamination. There have been several Phase 1 site assessments and one Phase 1 and Phase 2 site assessment of the property. One in 2000, one in 2005, both found no hazardous substances or petroleum products were found on the site, and that further action may be required if imported fill material is found to be contaminated. In 2010, Phase 1 and Phase 2 found no evidence of contamination on the site. Environmental Health developed 5 conditions, and these are conditions 48 through 52, regarding potential site contamination, and these have been reviewed and found adequate by the State's Department of Toxic Substances Control. The third issue in Dr. Smith's appeal is the project represents a breach of the settlement agreement that requires townhomes to be constructed on the site. Staff's only response is that this agreement expired on March 31st, 2008. And the last issue is regarding fire safety on the site. CAL FIRE has reviewed the development plans and endorsed all fire infrastructure improvements that are proposed for this project. That concludes staff's report to you. Our recommendation is that The board uphold the action that was taken by the Planning Commission, deny the appeals from Mr. Ferrante and Mr. Pryor and Dr. Smith, and approve the addendum to the mitigated neg deck, the conditional use permit modification that was proposed, and the density bonus as part of the project as well, based on the findings and conditions that are contained in the staff report. If you have any questions?
Questions by board members? Microphone. I see no questions by board members. Let me then ask Mr. Ferrante and Mr. Pryor, they filed one joint appeal, correct, together? Okay. You gentlemen right there? Okay. Why don't you go ahead and step forward? Will one of you be speaking on behalf of both, or? I'd like to hear you right now. You were the primary appellant, and if I may, and do you have a estimate of how much time you'll need for your case, sir?
I was told 3 minutes.
I'll give you 5. How's that?
Well,
and if that doesn't work for you, you'll let me know, and we can do it.
Okay, I would like to give each one of these to the supervisors. It's 4.
If you would please hand it to the clerk.
Yeah.
She'll check it in and make sure we each get a copy. Yeah.
I thought so. I think I'll let Mario go first. I'm coming.
That's just fine. So, Mr. Ferrante, if you would please.
My name's Mark Ferrante. With Mr. Pryor, we are the owners of a 15-acre parcel of ground beyond the access that was shown. Hopefully, did you guys receive a packet? I was not going to be here, and I sent a packet, but
yes, sir.
I took a definite red eye last night to be left my family in Canada, but we'll regroup. This is important to us.
Do you have a pointer?
Yes, we do have a pointer right over here. Be happy to.
First of all, I just state I think this board has always known that we have not gone against any of the project. We're not against the project. We have tried to work selfishly in some cases, but definitely positively with all the prior projects that are going to happen on that parcel, and it's no different. There's a long history on the right-of-way problem that exists there. Hopefully, the packet I gave you is semi-clear, but I'll restate some. Silver Bend Way was always a 12-foot road leading up to what we can call Pleasant Acres Drive, which would be the green, coming toward our access. Silver Bend Way coming up the area was a 12-foot roadway. Past boards, I can say, honestly, I would say almost held a gun to the head of most of the property owners along Silver Bend Way. We had a tremendous amount of development potential, of which 15 acres is in that entire area. I think at the time it was stated that possibly 240 units could be built in the area because of the zoning. And the board felt, starting back in the 70s, that to make that all possible, there was going to have to be some dedications and there was going to have to be some sacrifices by landowners along Silver Bend Way to what we call Pleasant Acres Drive to allow this to happen. And they put an L designation on all those properties along there with the meaning, as I understand it, that if anybody was going to do anything on any of those parcels of ground, first a dedication would have to be made to the county to get Silver Bend Way up to at least a 40, and they were talking at that time a 50-foot roadway. Many of the tenants along there gave up just very valuable frontage ground up Silver Bend Way to and slightly past Pleasant Acres Drive, and that roadway was accomplished. This project would not be happening if there wasn't a tremendous amount of sacrifices made by other landowners leading to this project in the past. And it was done simply because there was good zoning in the area, potential for a tremendous amount of growth, and we're part of it. The problem that we had is once it got to Pleasant Acres Drive, basically, we had two choices: wait until some development happens or go into litigation, because there was a definite mistake made. The communication when the Forest Hill Bridge was put in, it divided our parcel with part of the parcel that is now actually behind the McDonald's on the other side of the roadway. The Bureau got together with county staff and said, okay, we have to give this 15-acre parcel access back out to county roads, thinking that knowing that Silver Bend Way was supposedly owned by the county and that Pleasant Acres Drive was also part of county property. As it turns out, it wasn't. It was a private easement held by the Rothrocks, Mr. Rosine, as well as the property project owners. We've used that roadway for the past 32 years. We've had prescriptive rights over there. It's been sort of monkeyed with a little bit with gates of caution, that sort of thing, but, you know, we lived through all that. It brings me to a point, working relationships with redevelopment on this has been, I'd say, poor. If this project is the end of all area out there and there's nothing that exists beyond it and no need to plan for it, have roadways for it, any utilities to go beyond where they're at, and just satisfy the needs of this particular project. And that's why we're here, is because we need some assurance that not only our 15 acres, but there's probably an additional 40 or 50 acres that touch our property, that if we put a roadway on our property beyond our access, that they would have access to and open it up. And I know Mrs. Rothrock is here today, but our word is as good as anybody's word. We've always said anybody on the areas that could use our roadway, if we put one in, are welcome to connect to it. That's their prerogative. We're not there to get a piece of roadway into our property and then close everybody off. It's fine for anybody to use whatever improvements we put on, and we will incur those costs as they come. But we're at a point now, it's a little not understandable to me that when this project got going, that staff, knowing the problem exists with a roadway, and it's a landlocked issue because basically we're surrounded by private. I've heard it all. I've heard, well, you have other access. Well, we don't, not realistically. Yes, if the Rothrocks wanted access even to their property, they would have to buy up a quarter mile. They just have a 12-foot roadbed. They'd have to buy a quarter mile of stuff that's already developed with lawns and gardens right to that 12-foot to get to their piece back there. The logical way for anybody back there to get to their property would be a roadway that starts with us. We seem to have a willing partner in the developer of this project. Mr. May and U.S. Properties has been very upfront with it, very straight. Their hands are tied. They do not own the property. Redevelopment does. They can't talk for them. That's all they can say is that we would like to help you. We would like to clear up the issue. And we would like you to have both a roadway and utility rights to your property. The last project that went in, we worked hand in hand with them, and we ended up with the plan that I think showed up earlier. But if you guys can visualize it from there, this is the same project, and this cul-de-sac ends. This cul-de-sac is running on our little access. They brought the utilities right to and cut them off at our property line. That's a working relationship. We could deal with that. You know, all our thoughts improving our right-of-way. We're not asking this project to improve our right-of-way. We're not asking at all. We're just asking to put a roadway that leads to us that's workable, put the utilities down there so that they're workable. If they can't put them there, at least give us the right to sometime put the utilities to our property so we can open up our 15 acres and the additional 50 acres that land that lay beyond there. Maybe I'm just too simplistic, but it seemed reasonable to think that planning would look at it and say, you have something here that needs to be solved. You have a right-of-way issue here that's gone on forever that needs to be solved. You have a workable partner in the developer. I don't see the fight to keep either the roadway from not being completed properly, or the idea that utilities at some time can't not be brought up that roadway to use in the area beyond there. And our appeal is simply, let's just continue something that got started a long time ago, do it right. We're for the project, always have been. We haven't denied that. Let's just work together and get it done right.
Thank you. Mr. Pryor?
Yes. Let me start with the planning department. The planning department recognized our issue, okay, and they gave us condition 19, okay. We asked for an irrevocable offer dedication, and staff shook their heads and no, they didn't want it. So they wrote the condition. They wrote the condition with a may instead of shall, okay. There's two different terms there. It's like yes and no, okay. We came to you today because we want to end this, 30 years of this, okay. We want you to know that we want to work with the other property owners behind us. We're all in Sewer District 1. We want you to know that we're willing, we want this property to be available to be developed. And, you know, it's pretty simple for the good and orderly development. You know, I mean, the land manual states, you know, for safety issues and stuff, this appeal, we didn't want to be here today. We tried to work a deal with the redevelopment department. Last Friday, it all fell apart. It fell apart because two reasons. One, the redevelopment department put for the agreement was for ingress and egress, no utilities. In 1952, that 50-foot easement that Mr. Rosine, Mrs. Rothrock, and the redevelopment agency holds was written for roadway and utility purposes. Now, they weren't giving up anything to us that other people didn't hold on their property. But it did mean to us that we could develop our properties because we would have the use of roadway and utilities, okay? So last Friday, I called Marion Canada, and he came home for this hearing because we didn't want to be here today. We wanted to pull our appeal. Matter of fact, we had stated to your planning director and that we would pull it. We stated to Art May. I called Art afterwards, and he said, I thought it was a done deal, Bill. So did I. You know, but my attorney called, said no. You know, in the conversation with Kathy Donovan of the redevelopment department, she states that to our Larry Skidmore, our attorney, that Ridgeview Villa didn't provide. And today I brought you this foldout that shows you what Ridgeview Villa was going to do. They were going to give us all the hatch, and then on the back side, if you look over here, you'll see future main, force main for future development, for future lift station, because we got the lowest property. You know, I mean, this thing was all engineered by the same people who are engineering USA Homes. The gentleman that's doing it is Chris Schultze. Yeah, this TSD. You know, this was ours right out of the Ridgeview Villas packet. Okay, I brought it today to show you what was going to be done when they did that for the future development of the other people and other property owners behind it. Now, you know, planning sees this site. I see this site. We're not against it, okay? But we are concerned about our property, and we're concerned about other taxpayers. I mean, eventually it will all be developed, and it will be more revenue for the county. But why not? Why isn't planning taking it upon themselves to go ahead and reserve the corridors or do what's right for the rest of the property owners out there for the development? I mean, Mrs. Rothrock owns this parcel here, and she owns this 10 acres here. She's got an 8 or 10 foot right of way across this property here, I think. We've got 15. We've years ago, I told her husband that he could have a right of way. The easiest way to get to her property is right around our property, right there to that property. That's 10 acres. And there's 21 down here. There's other parcels of ground. You know, at one time, we started fighting with Silver Bend Way. It was zoned for over 220 units, pocket development, one way in, one way out. You know what I mean? This thing, I don't understand why we've always had so much trouble. You know, just getting the county to step up, you know. And then, of course, last week, with the money that the redevelopment is spending for all the parking lots and everything, why there's no way, I was told today, I wouldn't be able to talk about Silverbend Way, but issue, but the development of Silverbend Way would cleaning it up and everything would really make it nice. And as Mr. Holmes knows, we had Mr. Holmes out there on the Raley's development when they remodeled and did a $10 million remodel. And they didn't want to clean it up either. You know, and there they sit with a 24-foot driveway and a 28-foot driveway. You know, we've always been involved in that whole area there, okay? But only for the good of the people of Placer County, and for the how would I say, the taxpayers, so that they don't have to carry the burden, okay? You know, that's why we're here today. You know, I mean, we're here because we're concerned about our right-of-way, you know. And if the county gets near, we're not asking for anybody to spend any money for us. We don't care, you know what I mean? But we want that right-of-way secured for the future development of all that property there, somehow or other. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Would you grab your little pointer clicker back, please? I'd like to. Would you go back to the slide that shows the proposed project? Thank you. Yeah, that one's fine. Right now, that one doesn't illustrate the easement very clearly.
This is side by side of the two.
That one shows the easement a little bit more clearly. So under the development of the project that is proposed right now by USA Home, the road improvement goes right up to the easement.
To the easement.
Right up to the easement. Are utilities up to the easement?
Yes.
All utilities, all road improvements.
It's taken to this point here because the sewer lift station is going to be in the south part of the site, along with the detention. So there will be the sewer improvements down to that lift station down there.
Okay. So if I'm either Mr. Pryor or Mr. Franny, either one or both of you, if you would step back up here, please. I understand your concern about the language of may versus shall. I get that. I guess what I'm trying to understand is what is your concern in regard to the extension of the utilities in the roadway? What is being proposed here is construction of roadway and utilities necessary to serve the project as designed today. Obviously, the prior project had the roadway coming all the way down because it had to serve that design with the units down there at, I'm guessing, the southern end of the property.
Correct.
And so the utilities and the roadway had to be extended. Now the project proposes simply to build on the northern three-quarters and not to build on that southern quarter, and therefore the roadway and utilities are being put in to serve the project as it's designed now. So help me understand what your concern is as it relates to the roadway and utilities being delivered to the easement.
Okay. We have not seen any plans on utilities, so I can't speak to where.
We have our staff testifying that utilities will be, and the way that we do things today is they all go in the road. And so it's going in the road right up to, and that's full utilities. It's water, sewer, electric, that's everything in the road?
Okay. You know, Mr. Euler, we asked to see a completed set of plans or a drawing of with Supervisor Montgomery at a special meeting we had. And Karen Schwab and Kathy Donovan didn't want to show them to us.
Well,
but here's the thing. At the bottom end of this development, they take the roadway across their property, not down that 25-foot. They move it off of the property, off of the right-of-way, and take it in a piece of no man's land right there, if you can see it, to there. So it isn't in that 25-foot easement coming down there. Now, I don't know if Condition 19 is going to protect us so that we can use that roadway or not, but we're concerned. You see this, it's not drawn very good. This there's 25 foot of right-of-way
Understood.
on this side right
Understood.
here. That's the 25 foot.
No, I get all that.
This
yes.
is 25. You see right there, you see
Right.
how they take that road off and they put it up, they leave it on their property. It's not in that 25 foot, you see. And we were concerned about that, you see, because that then ties up everything there. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Whether condition 19, if they are to give it to us, that would include that piece of property, then we could use that.
All right.
Yeah.
So on the issue of utilities and all the rest being in the road to serve the project, though, I don't hear you expressing concern. Well, perhaps you still are. And so maybe at this point, my question comes back to staff. If you could, please, and I don't know if it's Wes, I see conversation going back and forth here with council and engineering. But clearly, the appellant's concern is just, do we get access to the road? And if we get access to the road, are there utilities in it at the end of the road that we can tap into?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Wes Zicker from Engineering and Surveying. Let me see if I can help the board with some information. One of the last points raised was there are no plans for utilities today. You're being asked to approve an entitlement.
Understood.
We don't have improvement
Understood.
plans. So
No,
yes,
that's-
the gentlemen are correct. There is no plan.
You wouldn't have spent the money on specific design construction drawings before you get an approval. I get that.
Condition
Let's just talk about the availability of the road access and utilities to their project as it relates to connecting through that easement.
Okay. At this point in time, the condition 19 requires the applicant to work with these gentlemen and other property owners to create an easement for access basically along this line. Although the existing easement follows this way, to their right-of-way here, there obviously is a curve in the road, and the condition would allow us to work with the applicant and RDA to get the appropriate dedication for an access road, an access road along the alignment here that would ultimately be extended to their property. Certainly, condition 19 could be, a minor change would be to make it an easement for road and utility purposes, and at the board's direction, staff would be happy to work with the applicant and see that the utilities are stubbed out at least to that point. That's relatively straightforward stuff.
Which, if I may interrupt, we would do for any other project. If it was brought in by any other developer, we'd say, you got to build that thing out that way so that, right?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes. Okay. Couple of points for the board. Right now, there's a 25-foot easement from the property line to the east. The road itself sits 5-foot offset from that. Hence, 5 feet of that road is outside of the existing 25-foot easement, but the condition would allow us to cover that to make sure these gentlemen had access to that road in its entirety.
So they don't have to drive 5 feet off the curb, is what you're saying?
Right.
Okay, that's probably helpful.
Minor point, but still. The bigger question becomes the may or shall on the irrevocable offer of dedication. The reason staff suggested may is because currently this road, as we say, is 25 feet wide. An IOD of less than 40 feet creates significant problems for the board to accept. I wouldn't say it can't be done, but it's not normally done. A minimum IOD is normally 40 feet to allow the county to have adequate width of road to maintain it. So if you postulated a 40-foot wide IOD from the property line this way, it creates major headaches, which is why we thought it should be better said as may. Ultimately, there is this other 25 feet, which is not a topic for today. Perhaps someday in the future, somebody could combine them in some fashion. But we did not see the correctness of trying to say shall as opposed to may. Absolutely, positively, the condition requires the developer to work with the appellants to provide access to be extended to utilities as the board has heard discussion. I don't know if that helps.
So then help me understand the nuance between having an access easement, if you will, and a utility easement versus the offer of dedication, the irrevocable offer of dedication. What, from their standpoint, as a property owner, what does it do or does not do by way of a property the easement grants them the access to both the road and the utilities, correct? Okay. So what does the IOD do that the easement doesn't do?
The IOD creates a potential for sometime in the future, the board adopting the road as a county highway. It is not, in my mind, a given that the board would do it. The board would have the option to accept the offer of dedication in the future, should they see fit.
Okay. So it is staff's intent, and it's certainly been said here on the record, that it is the intent of this project to provide both road and utility access as the project is designed through to these folks.
Correct.
Okay.
And we believe the conditions address that.
Okay. Thank you. And if I may, gentlemen, one more time. Having heard that,
that statement has never been presented to us. Okay, so this is a first. Now, you do understand that where they develop that road, it does not reach our easement.
I understand, but that's why I articulated the distinction that the intent here, as expressed by them through this plan, is to provide access to both the road and utilities. So whether it actually touches that easement or not, or whether it will require some little part be carved out and a new easement created, whatever, we now have it on the record that the intent is to provide road and utility access to where that road currently ends in the plan on the right.
Okay. That's clear, and I'd have to...
No, it's fine.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fair.
All right. No issues on staff side. Perfect. You raised the issue of the fence. You want to address that real quick, or are we ready to move on beyond the fence?
Well, the fence was down the middle of the 50-foot easement here. Let me have the pointer there. The original set of plans showed a 6-foot-high chain link fence down that's right down that property line right there. But I think it's been removed now.
Okay.
And
all right.
By staff. South end.
All right. Tony, you leaned forward awfully quickly. Is there anything you want to...
Just hold
Anytime the attorney jumps forward. Okay. Yes.
Just to clarify, just like any other private property owner, that condition of the easement would only be perfected by the project moving forward.
Right.
In terms of moving forward, and that's consistent with all projects, right, on the improvement plans.
Yes, Mr. Miller, the condition says prior to approval of the improvement plans, the applicant shall work with the neighbors to create the easement.
Right. Right.
Gentlemen, I want to tell you, we're satisfied today.
Okay.
But this project does not go forward. We're going to litigate that right away with prescriptive rights and settle this thing once and for all.
But
Okay.
and understanding that if the project doesn't go forward, we have other issues that we will be addressing. Understanding that, but hopefully we've addressed your concern as it relates, and we all hope that this project does move forward. At least some of us do. We're now about to hear from a gentleman who doesn't. So the other appellant, Mr. Dale Smith, it's your turn to come and be heard.
Well, you're concerned nearly a half an hour on that. So much for your 5-minute things, huh? That is a naughty problem, really, no doubt about it.
Your name for the record, sir?
I will in just a moment.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
For the
Good
dramatic.
morning, honorable supervisors. It's been a long time since I appeared at this podium. Have you missed me?
We don't know.
I don't think so. I'm Dr. Dale Smith, 3410 Sunshine Way, Auburn, one of the three. And as an appellant, I expect to have more time than I did in the commission hearing. That was a little bit of a fiasco. I paid my dues, $495 worth of them for that appeal. And you've covered pretty well what I was going to discuss in my first 3 or 4 little paragraphs here about the situation with that very naughty problem you've just dealt with. Thank you for handling that, because that's always been a real deep concern to me. And it seemed like such a difficult thing to get taken care of. Now, the Placer County Redevelopment Agency is involved in Silver, although for a long time nobody could tell that because they didn't want people to know that they were in. in it. But there is a law, and I don't think that many people know about it. It's called Torres versus Board of Commissioners, 89 Calap 3rd, 545 California Court of Appeal, 5th District, 1979. What a mouthful it is. But they say in addressing the issue of whether a certain agency was subject to the Brown Act or the Bagley-Keene Act, which applies to state boards and commissions, the California Court of Appeal looked at whether the agency was a local in scope and character, restricted geographically in its area of operation, and does not have statewide power or jurisdiction, even though it is created by and an agent of the state rather than the city or county in which it functions, close quotes. Now, the court concluded in that the local housing authority, the PCRA in this case, was and is a local agency for purposes of the Brown and Bagley-Keene and the California Public Records Act. And I want that on the record because we've had some real difficulties in getting information from the PCRA over a period of time. Now, there's another thing that I want to bring forward this morning, and it's a really serious matter for me, because this massive county report only reached me last Thursday. It reached them last Friday. For more than 1 month, the county has had opportunity to take care of this. We have 2 working days to try to put our program together. Somehow, the inequity of that is a serious problem for me, and I'm really concerned about it. And now, yesterday, I received a shocking email from our original 2002 toxics expert, Bernard Centenian, quote, "After reading the documents you provided, I find myself with a potential and unanticipated conflict of interest. I just now learned that the applicant for the project development is USA Properties Fund. USA is an existing client of EEI, and we have worked on a number of projects in the Sacramento area. Dale, I recuse myself from any further work on this project." Now, when your top expert bows out logically and correctly, it's a pretty big blow. Now, yesterday when I met with Supervisor Holmes, I did not know this. And coupled with this very late arrival of the county staff report and the fiasco of this whole thing that I've seen this morning, I think this is a project that needs to be continued. I think there's a lot more to be done on it. I would like to see it continued so that we would have the opportunity to get other experts. Now, we've brought evidence and we've filed it, and we've talked about things that are there that we never talked about in the last time around. And one of them is this evidence settler pond. And this pond was put in there during the 1930s, and it was a settling pond. It's right smack dab where this project's going to be. And all of the stuff from all of the PG&E way uphill comes down there. It was never investigated before. I brought this to the attention of the DTSC, and they're in the process of trying to pull together something on that now. Now, this situation, and I'd like to ask for a continuation, if I possibly can, because I think it's something of, if we had a 45-day continuance to locate another expert on the toxic issue, I'm sure that we could get this put together. And yesterday, when I talked with Supervisor Holmes, I was very much interested in trying to find an equitable solution for all of this, a win-win for everyone. And this is how I see it now. If we could get the toxics cleaned up, if they exist, and I think the county has an obligation to find out if they do exist. If they exist, they need to be cleaned up. And so that's one of the things that we could do.
Please continue.
Thank you. And now, I want to bring up a couple other things because I think they're very important. Your BOS and PCRA 622 hearing minutes have approval for a $1,397,000 project paid for with North Auburn Redevelopment Project Area funds. That's taxpayer money for the Rainbow Avenue public parking lot. And there's another one here just like that, and comes from the Auburn Journal. There was an article that was in there on July 28th and documents another large expenditure. Redevelopment Project Area Funds, $1.8 million to prove this, to pave, rather, this property. Now, in a recession, I just wonder why taxpayer funds are being paid for parking lots. The PCRA has $1.397 million, in one case of $1.8 million, to pave parking lots, especially one owned by a Southern California company. Why doesn't it have sufficient funds to properly complete the full redesign and construction of the appropriate Silver Bend streets in this project? If you do that, you'd have a win-win situation. You wouldn't have any opposition from anybody else. Now, on the fire issue, from my experience the first time around in 2000, I have absolutely no confidence in the CAL FIRE report in your action package. And here's an example taken from 2008 of the ineptitude. On August 30th, 2008, area fire, CAL FIRE truck went careening down Silver Bend Way, which is very narrow, does not meet the required fire safety standards, only to arrive at a dead end far from the fire, and it was useless. By the time it got back up the hill, the fire was out. Now, our filed documents show California state and county laws were not followed, and I'm depending on the record today and what we have filed to take care of all of this. I don't have a very long speech. I'm just about finished. But I tell you one thing about it. If the laws are not followed, and they're not right now, there is a great danger of wildfires roaring up the hill from the American River Canyon. Go out there and take a look at that and see how much high grass is in all of that area out there now. It could be just like the 49er fire, which was very close to my house, by the way, and it frightened the life out of me. Supervisors, honorable supervisors, there's a serious threat of a disastrous Silver Bend area fire, and it could kill and maim a lot of people, and you can prevent it. You're spending $3.197 million for parking lots. I just want to ask you, do you have no money for the safety of the public? Give it serious consideration, please. Thank you. And please, I would love if you would grant this continuance so I could pull my stuff all together. By the way, I'm leaving on the 22nd for Romania, where we have a mission work, and I have an emergency over that I have to go take care of. So if we could have a continuance, would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Let's address that issue first. First of all, in regard to you receiving the staff report on Thursday, congratulations, you got it a day before the board members got theirs. We board members don't get our entire, you just got that one packet. We got all of this on Friday. So that's normal course of business, unfortunately, is that we get our stuff the Friday before our Tuesday hearing, and we take it upon ourselves not just to hear this item with adequate preparation, but all the items on our agenda. And then as far as your witness is concerned, not being able to be here because of a conflict, it's unfortunate. I don't think it's been any secret that this is USA Properties has been in this project for some time, and so that your witness just realized yesterday that USA Properties was involved in the project and thereby a conflict was created. I'm sorry about that, but as an appellant, it is incumbent upon you to be able to show up prepared with all appropriate folks. And so unless I hear a motion from my colleagues that we interrupt this hearing at this point for a continuance, we will go ahead and continue on. And I'm not hearing that motion, so we will go ahead and continue on.
May I have one more word?
I'm sorry?
May I have one more word?
Of course.
Thank you. This is not unexpected. All the documents have been placed in the record just exactly as they were the last time, and the result's going to be the same time around. Same thing the next time. So wouldn't you prefer to try to work together to make something happen, to bring this out to a win-win instead of getting into a legal conflict once again? That's your choice, sir. That's your choice. And I've long hated the problem that you guys and gals face with getting that packet when you get it. It's wrong. There's no way on God's green earth that any of you can ever read and digest all that material. And yet you're held accountable and responsible for it.
And thank you.
And I appreciate what you do, but I don't think, give us some time. You've given them some time, give us some time to put it together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to hear from the applicant represented by the redevelopment agency, I believe, first. It is, no? Jim, you're comfortable letting Mr. Phillips represent the project at this point? How would you like the applicant's case to be represented? Why don't I put it that way?
Actually, I think USA Properties is here, Properties Fund is here as well, and so I would first ask them to respond.
Okay. Mr. Phillips?
Well, Mr. Phillips is coming up. If I might just take a moment, there's some confusion about parking lot construction.
Yes, I was going to ask Mr. LeBout to address that at some point.
Clarify a few items. As your board is aware, this is the Auburn redevelopment area is not your only redevelopment area. You have areas in Kings Beach, you have areas in Tahoe City, you have areas in the Sunset Industrial area. Each one of those, and by far the Tahoe ones, generate the most money. Parking lot specific, that is the area which your board has already authorized in cooperation with Caltrans, improvements of State Highway 28, I believe, is the number on it, which is a $44 million project that requires the removal of on-street parking, that necessitates the building of parking lots to fulfill that off-site parking that used to be provided on the state highway, that also deals with improving the lake clarity, a number of drainage improvements. Those parking lot construction and acquisitions are part of that overall project, and quite frankly, the money's generated up there too as well.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Phillips.
Good morning, Chairman Euler, members of the board. George Phillips here on behalf of USA Properties. I will try to be brief in my comments. First, I think I just want to start off with the environmental documentation, and Mike's presented it very well, but I just wanted to emphasize that going back to the townhome project in '06, there was a mitigated negative declaration prepared for that project. There was not a challenge to that document. Our environmental documentation relied on that prior document plus the analysis by your staff as to whether or not, as Mike said, this proposal adds any new significant impacts or increases any previously identified significant impacts. And we believe that clearly there is not the case that can be made in that regard. We believe that this project actually presents fewer impacts. It has a smaller development envelope. It has less impervious surfaces, more open space, more tree retention than the project that was approved back in '06. So we actually think we've improved upon the previously approved project, again, that was not challenged. As it relates to, if I could go in reverse order, Mr. Smith's objections, clearly, as mentioned by staff, CAL FIRE has reviewed this project. They believe they can provide adequate fire service to the site. We are looking to their expertise on their abilities to do that, and certainly your staff is as vigilant as anyone in making sure that that, in fact, is the case. So we're comfortable with that. Relative to the issues submitted by Dr. Smith and his concerns about the environmental analysis, the soils and toxic circumstances, as Mike also mentioned, with past projects there were phase 1 and 2 toxic analysis prepared on this site. USA Properties has prepared a phase 1 and phase 2. Pursuant to the additional conditions that have been added by environmental health, as Mike also mentioned, pursuant to protocol and standards adopted by DTSC, those tests have already begun. USA has already commenced that additional testing. The results are coming in now, and we do not have a complete report yet, but those tests have not revealed any significant contamination issues. But the board is assured that those tests will be completed, and they must come out clean, or there will be a remediation action required by DTSC, and we'll be required to take care of that issue before the project moving forward. So again, the board has assurance that those I's will be dotted and T's crossed prior to any development at the site. So I think as it relates to Dr. Smith's concerns, we believe these issues have actually several times, and the board has the ability to take today, and that the answers have been provided, and the tests will be and reviewed by your staff before the project moves forward. As it relates to the access issue, I was going to suggest the chairman that he has a career in terms of a mediator, because that was fun to watch. You made more progress than I think a lot of people trying to make progress on that issue to date so far. And we feel, again, that this access issue has been asked to provide the assurance that Mr. Pryor seek relative to access to their property. We'll be extending that roadway section to their easement area. It is actually going to be a 33 pavement section, not just 25 feet, to provide particular access to their site. We have to clarify by both Deputy County Counsel, RDA Counsel, and others, we wanted to clarify that the sizing of the utilities to date are going to be sized for the project. Know what to anticipate relative to future development of those vessels. But certainly those utilities will be in the ground. Those owners will have access to those facilities. And in fact, USA Properties will be stubbing sewer to Dean property, the Rothwalk property, it's a tongue twister, the property, and Mr. Pryor and Mr. Ferrante's property. So again, I think the board has assurance that issue can get clearly. Condition 19 is there to do everything, is to make sure that that access is provided, and we with your Public Works Department to make sure that that takes place. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions. How's that for timing?
Questions, Mr. Phillips? Okay, thank you. I don't see now.
Thank you.
Mr. LeBeau, if you would come up, just for clarification, the redevelopment agency owns the property.
Correct.
USA Properties will be developing the project, all that fun stuff. Just to be sure that we have on the record as the representative of the development agency which owns the property, your concurrence with what was said here earlier in regard to the road access, the utility subbed out, all those other things.
We have, in fact, offered to Mr. Pryor and Mr. Ferrante the easement that they requested. We have also stated is that it is our intent that this project goes forward, and as USA Properties has said, they have already offered to provide the access and the use of the improved road as well as the utilities with the project completed. However, there's not an assurance that the project will be completed. They have to apply for funding. If the project is not funded, USA Properties may go away. We may need to seek a new developer. They may have a different design. So we didn't want to offer an IOD, which then into perpetuity, and it would tie the hands of future potential for the project. But it is certainly our intent and our hope that that is exactly what will happen.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Ms. Paul, considering environmental health's name is once or twice.
Yes, and I would like to clarify one thing. Jill Paul, Environmental Director, is that my staff has reviewed the photos submitted, and the settlement plan has been determined to not be on this plan. So I just want to clarify that. I think Mike might have touched on that, but Mr. Smith brought up. I just want to clarify that. So
that's an important distinction. The settlement pond then in question is not on the property. The detention pond that we're seeing illustrated there is a project-specific requirement. It's not exists out there already. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. This is a public hearing. We will go ahead and open this up. Members of the public who wish to address the board on this item, if you would please go ahead and up. We are going to ask that you observe the 3-minute time for speakers under the public hearing.
Supervisors, my name is George Horan. I live at 82 Memory Lane in Auburn. I'm a landlord in the area. I want to advise you that the market is absolutely flooded with affordable housing. Rents are not going up, they're going down. Rents are cheaper than they were 10 years ago, and I have a 30% rate. This is the equivalent of pouring water on land to build this thing. We don't need it. What we need are jobs. I drove through the airport industrial park today. Half those buildings are empty. Go through the class of the Auburn Journal. You will find that for every job listing, 20 properties available for rent, lease, or sale. You can drive the whole length of the 49 corridor. You will not find one business with a sign in the window that says needed. If you build this thing, you will not be able to fill it with residents in the local area. I can attest it. If they want affordable housing, I'm loaded with it. What you will is the same thing that happened when you built Palm Terrace. They couldn't fill it with the land, so they took out half-page color ads in the second advertising for Section 8 recipients. Now this project will be filled by advertising for people who are on public assistance in Sacramento County. They will fill your schools with children who do not speak English, your emergency rooms with people with no health insurance. And as far as your court systems, I ask you to talk to any county sheriff, any Auburn police officer about the number of calls they get at Palm Terrace. If that's what you want to do here, that's how you'll achieve it. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Bring you out to the board. Any questions, additional questions, comments by board members? Supervisor Montgomery.
I just want to circle back a little bit here and make sure that we've really addressed various concerns. Mr. Ferranti and Mr. Pryor, it from your response to Chairman Euler's acknowledging of the situation that you are now satisfied with the road and utilities issue, and you had already been satisfied regarding the fencing issue, correct?
Sorry, what was that last issue? The fencing, you're comfortable with the fencing?
That issue had already been resolved to satisfaction, is that correct? Okay, great. Moving on to Dr. Smith's concerns, I am comfortable with the staff recommendation that there is not any substantive difference between a 64-unit house project and a 64-unit apartment project, and indeed, looking at the specifics of the various projects, it is actually a small, so logically the impacts would be smaller rather than greater. I do share Dr. Smith's concerns about making sure there is no contaminated soil. However, I believe that is more than adequately addressed with the conditions in the existing document. As for CAL FIRE, frankly, I refer to their judgment on this. It is their profession, it is their job, it is their legal responsibility. I am satisfied with CAL FIRE's decision on this. That's really all I have to say, but thank you very much for your work on this. And thank you to everyone for coming out and speaking on this today.
And council has asked that I affirm on the record the nodding of the heads of Mr. Ferranti and Mr. Pryor in response to Supervisor's question. As council points out, nodding of heads doesn't record on the transcript. So in the affirmative that your concerns are satisfied. Yes, okay, thank you. Thank you. Board members have any questions or comments at this point? And seeing none, what is the pleasure of the board?
I would move we deny the appeals of Mrs. Ferranti and Pryor as they have apparently been adequately addressed, and that we deny the appeal of Dr. Dale Smith on the basis set forth in the staff report. Tony, do you want all three of these at once, or would you like them separately?
No, I think you can do it all at once.
Yeah.
Okay. And third, I move that we approve the addendum and the conditional use permit modification for the Miners Ridge Family Apartments, PCPM 2010-0046, and adopt the same findings and conditions of approval of the Planning Commission, which are set forth in Exhibit A as the board's findings and conditions in this matter.
Okay, that's the motion. We have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second to deny the appeals and approve the addendum and conditional use permit as specified in the motion. All in favor, please say aye. 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 Opposed? None? Thank you very much. Okay, we will pick up with our 11:30 timed item. We have a request to continue. Give just a moment. If I may ask folks to step outside for their conversation at this point, we have some more business we need to attend to here. Okay, the 11:30 timed item, a rezoning Bunch Creek Timberland Production Zone property. We have a request the item be continued. The request has been made by the applicants. Does staff have any opposition to the request for continuance?
No, staff does not oppose. The applicant's requesting a continuance so that a full panel of the board can be present to hear this appeal, and staff supports that request.
Okay. Questions or concerns by members of the board? Seeing none, do we have a motion to continue to the August 24th at 11 o'clock? August 24th at 11 o'clock. Do we have a motion to continue the item?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Montgomery, second Holmes to continue the item. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None. Thank you very much. We'll hear that item 11 o'clock on the 24th. And then we will wrap up our department head items.
Back to number
Six, right. And again, the board still has some more items to finish up here, so if we can go ahead, we will adjourn as the Placer County Board of Supervisors, convene as the Placer County Redevelopment Agency in order to take up item number 6 on our agenda. Mr. LeBeau.
Kathy Donovan will give the report.
Morning.
Good morning. Item 6 is an option agreement request. The agency is seeking authority for the director to execute an option agreement with Forge Ridge Family Apartments for the agency-owned property at 360 Silver Bend Way. On item 7B...
Speak up just a little, please.
On item 7B, we'll be requesting to apply for a home project funding application. In order to do that, we need to demonstrate that the developer has site control, and that option agreement will do that. The option agreement in itself doesn't transfer the property. It is just a mechanism to demonstrate site control for the purposes of the home application.
All right, questions by board members on item number 6? Any members of the public wish to address the board on item 6? Seeing none, what's the pleasure?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion Holmes, second Montgomery to approve the option agreement. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, none. Thank you very much. We adjourn as the Redevelopment Agency, reconvene as Placer County Board of Supervisors in order to take up items 7A and 7B.
Thank you. 7A is a grant application. We're requesting authorization to apply for $800,000 to the State Housing and Community Development Department for housing programs conducted by our redevelopment agency, primarily first-time homebuyer program. We have applied for and successfully received this grant in 2000, 2005, and then again most recently in 2008. And we have gone through all those funds, successfully implementing that program. The last grant we received in 2008 was for $800,000. And with those funds, 7 first-time homebuyer loans were awarded to lower-income households, 3 in Auburn, 2 in Meta Vista, 1 in Forest Hill, and 1 in Penryn. And we are now hoping to successfully be granted these funds again so that we can continue the program.
Okay, questions by board members? Seeing none, any members of the public? All right, pleasure of the board. I hear a motion by Wygant down there, so we'll take a second by Montgomery to approve the application for the $800,000 under the 2010 Home Investment Partnership Program. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, none. Thank you very much. And moving on to B.
7B is a request for authorization to submit a home project application for Quartz Ridge to the State Department of Housing and Community Development in an amount not to exceed $3.1 million, and if awarded, to sign the standard agreement and all required documentation.
Okay, questions by board members? Any members of the public wish to address the board? It's the pleasure of the board. not letting any grass grow. We had a motion by Holmes and a second by Wykant. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. That concludes the open session items. We will adjourn to lunch and closed session, where we will discuss.
The board will take up 2 existing litigation matters indicated on page 4, item 11A. There will also be anticipated litigation discussed and labor discussed. We will report back later.
Thank you very much.